heal from all that stress. We trust the guardians, trust the guides, trust inside. When the mood is high, it's time to fly. In your mind, let it all unwind. Let's get to time to engage. Turn another page, free from your cage. Get disenraged. When you feel like you've had enough and the week was busy and tough, you need a break, you need some to take time from the run. We'll blow your mind. We're just seeking, ye shall find. Time to unwind, disenraged. Time to engage. Turn another, free from your cage. Get disenraged. Spirits in the shadows, virtuality, ultra reality, the Bible, the pagans, all the conspiracies, tarot, astrology, and alternate history. Open your heart's abilities and get disenraged. Time to engage. Free from your cage. Get disenraged. 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 Disenraged.
All right. Well, it seems to still be a problem. So what I need everyone to do is I need you to be very specific about what the audio problem is. And can we even do the show? Can we even do it? Because again, I know this is StreamYard. Do you guys know how I know it's StreamYard? Because I literally saw my StreamYard platform updated. So I know this is something that StreamYard is fucking with. So what that means is because this is something StreamYard is fucking with, there's nothing that I can do about it, and there is nothing that Jennifer can do about it. Okay, people are saying it smooths out. It's better now. It is frame lock causing audio stuttering. Well, I don't know what that means. So
Hold on, I just pulled it up on YouTube. I don't know how to mute this though. How to mute you. Hold on, let me see here.
I got okay. Okay, this is the part where I have to explain to you guys. Do not fucking tell me how to troubleshoot because I don't fucking know what this means. And honestly, what's going to happen is you're just going to really piss me off. There is nothing that I can do about this. This is StreamYard. This is not a cable. This is the streaming platform. I cannot fix the streaming platform. If you guys tell me, Karlyn, do this on your end, it is not on my end. It is StreamYard.
Okay, the interesting thing is, sorry, I was just kind of watching this over there. I don't seem to be cutting out. You seem to be cutting out.
I'm the one cutting out? It might be on my fucking StreamYard then. I bet it's because it's my StreamYard and I'm the one running the stream.
It's something on, yeah, it's definitely because I don't know if it's because I'm a guest or what.
You're a guest on my stream.
Right.
So they're doing something around my fucking account and there's not shit I can do about it.
Well, I mean, we can just study as we go and we can try out the videos. Maybe the videos will be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would like everyone to tell me how bad the problem is on a scale of 1 to 10.
You sound fine, and then all of a sudden it just sounds like you cut out just for a little bit, and then you sound fine, and then you.
Oh, you know what it is?
Yeah.
It's the heater's on. I know exactly what it is. It's the fucking heater. Then
Okay.
that's the problem is. But that shouldn't have impacted the music. Is the thing.
Yeah.
Me cutting out was the heater, but it should not have impact. Okay, there's no even consistent answer as to how bad the problem is.
Friggin' really?
See, this is the problem, and this is why when there's something wrong, I tell people in the chat, do not fucking help me troubleshoot, because it's like no one knows what the fuck is going on. No one has any agreement about what the problem actually is. No one has any fucking assessment of like, I mean, it's just like, it is a fruitless effort to have the chat troubleshoot, and now I'm actually pissed off. Okay, but it's not actually all good when people are giving answers from anywhere from 3 to 8, okay? It's not actually okay. It's not actually good. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we can try the video and see if the video skips. What do you want to do?
You seem. Hold on, I was just checking it again over on YouTube, and you seemed okay to me. I mean, but let's give the video a try. But before we do that, I have to off gas about my day a little bit, if that's okay.
Oh, please go ahead, bitch and complain. Yes.
So I almost woke up to people in my house this morning, which did not make me happy. Yeah, so I had a realtor schedule a showing for 10 o'clock in the morning next Tuesday, and he came this morning.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
I almost let myself sleep in. I've been trying to get up a little bit earlier and, say goodbye to husband before he goes to work and just get my day started. And it's been working out really well. But this morning I was like, oh, maybe I'll sleep in. Then I'm like, no, I better not. Just get up. This is how you do things. This is how you make it habits. Just make yourself do them. So I literally had just gotten my fresh little cup of coffee. And I just sat down the computer, and husband is behind me, and he looks out and he goes, we got a showing today? I said, no, next Tuesday. And he goes, there are people walking up to our front door. And all I had on was a summer dress. I had nothing else on. And I'm like, there's dishes like from dinner last night, dishes and pots. I have laundry downstairs everywhere. There are 2 feral dogs in my house. And I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, go intervene, husband. I gotta go put clothes on. I gotta get at least my bras taken off from hang drying. I mean, oh my God. People don't realize when you're looking at houses, if those like, we don't work normal day job hours. So this is why I requested an hour notice before people schedule. So I have an hour to kind of get things ready before we have to leave. But people don't realize what the people who live in that house have to do to get ready for you to walk in their house and go, I don't like the layout, and then wipe their feet and walk out, because that's about half of what these people do. So yeah, so we just quickly, and my husband's out there going, I'm really sorry. We got dirty dishes on the counter. We're not ready. We were waiting. This was next week. And the realtor's like, oh, wow, that was my bad. I'm really sorry.
Huh.
I'm just like, oh God, really? And that was just the beginning, because then I finally get the dogs in the car. I go driving off. They're only supposed to be here for, I don't know if he scheduled a whole hour. I don't even remember. I just started driving around, and randomly I've been looking at memory lane. I've been checking. I went to the college I went to. I drove around the tech school that I went to. That's all still there. And it was pretty cool looking to see that again. I drive around neighborhoods I've never gone into. I went past old apartments that I used to live in, and like all kinds of stuff and I get back. And as soon as I get back, I'm like, oh, okay, safe. So I go downstairs, I pull off my clothes, put my summer dress and my sweater back on. I get another fresh cup of coffee. I sit down, my phone goes off, and it's another viewing request for an hour from now. And I'm like, okay. And so I scrambled and got the dishes done. I got the laundry put away. I like wiped everything down, put all the crap away in the bathroom. And like, because you have to have, everything has to be a blank canvas. We have to put our soaps away and shampoos away every time we shower.
That would drive me insane. Like this would prevent me from putting my house on the market forever if it like if I had to put my fucking shampoo away, like fuck you.
Yeah, we have a system. We have baskets that certain things go in, and I have a cart with some of my kitchen utensils and cleaning things that I use all the time that we just wheel into this room so that the kitchen can look all pristine. Because this room's kind of the muck room, like shit's just getting thrown in here right now, and so we just we have a system. I have a box. I just go and I throw everything in the box from the shower, and then if I have I don't want people looking at my dirty laundry, so I pick up like the biggest piece of clothing and I cover it so it looks all nice. We have to totally redo the bed because we don't sleep like normal people either. 3 million pillows and all different kinds of blankets everywhere. So we stuff all that in a giant trash bag and make it look all pristine with one comforter so it looks like a normal house. It's absolutely crazy. And so I got all that done. I got the dogs in at I think they were coming at 12:30 was the second viewing. I got the dogs out the door at 11:27 and the realtor's like, hi. And my dogs are all, whoa, 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 whoa. And they're yanking. I'm like, oh my God. She's like, oh, you got a handful. I'm like, this is why we need, thank you for being so nice. I'm like, just get them in the car and get out of your way, please. And she had like 5 people with her.
Wow.
And we think what was going on is that there's another house for sale 2 doors down that just got flipped. And it's way expensive. It's like over $100,000 more than our house that they're asking for. And nobody likes what they did with it.
Oh no. So they go see the house that's really expensive that no one likes, and then they take them to your house. That's awesome, actually.
Yeah, so that's what's kind of been happening. And then when I got back from that one, I was like, I'm not going to touch anything because I have a feeling this is not the end of the day. And sure enough, I got another showing request for 2 hours later. And I'm like, yep. So that was my day. I just kind of spent it watching relaxing videos on YouTube going, this is fine.
Okay, we're all surviving.
Yep. It was so crazy. Anyway.
Well, I'm glad we get to then sit down and watch some Jewish mysticism, Jennifer. And Jennifer, per usual, has picked out our entries for tonight because she no longer trusts me to pick things out.
That is not true.
Freaks her the fuck out. Oh, wait, we got a super chat from Murphy's Pool.
Oh.
How did the man say to his girlfriend, what did the man say to his girlfriend when she told him she had HPV? Honey, I love you, warts and all. Yeah. Yeah.
It is so Murphy's Pool. It's so many levels.
Yeah.
I can't share that one. Some of his that he's done are so cute, and I've shared them. I can't share that one.
I don't mind that one. I thought that was pretty funny. All right, we're doing Jewish Kabbalah magic tonight. Now, I want to remind everyone this is a no anti-Semitism channel, and we love Jews here. And obviously, we are doing this just to celebrate the ingenuity of the Jew.
Hanukkah is coming up.
Hanukkah's coming up, and we are celebrating them for their understanding and their grasp of magic. And I have to be honest, Jennifer, I don't know anything about Kabbalah except it has to do with a red bracelet or sometime. And one time, a long time ago, a psychic gave me a Kabbalah reading where it had something to do with a tree, but I didn't really understand it. But she gave me a whole printout. It was like 50 pages of like my Kabbalah tree or like whatever. Oh. Jennifer, great choice. Yeah, Jewish magic.
So let me preface this little bit. This isn't going to be the traditional, here's the Kabbalah tree, here's the different parts of the Kabbalah tree, here's how you go through the Kabbalah tree into enlightenment. This is not what I found. What I found is far, far, far more interesting. We will get to the tree at some point.
Oh,
but in order to understand that, I think a little bit of a background on where Judaism as we know it today came from is super important, because every religion today, every major religion has an origin story. And since I know everybody here and you are very fond of Israel and the Jews and all the
yes, we love the Jews here. We love the Jews.
And
yes.
I'm not in trouble. This is my way of honoring spirituality, because that is what I do. And this is back in the day, way back in the day, they were polytheistic. They worshipped goddesses. They're in fact, I don't know if it's this week or next week, we're going to learn about the transsexual priests. There are some really interesting pieces of history that I think are worth knowing.
Yeah, Jews invented gender ideology. apparently, and we celebrate them for that ingenuity.
No, I don't think they invented that, but
They did, Jennifer. They actually did, like literally, they did. But that's, you know what, they were being creative. Fine, whatever.
okay, there were high priestesses. There was a lot more equality between the genders. There was a lot of things, and the same can be said for ancient Christianity and a lot of other places that started back, thousands of years ago. Everybody had many gods, lots of pantheons. There was a lot more.
You're sounding like you're a Marxist right now, and it's freaking me out.
Me?
Yes.
I sound like a Marxist?
Yes, this is literally what the queer Marxists say. They say back before capitalism, civilization had many genders, and the elders in society who typically were non-binary and had no
I
gender.
haven't said any of that shit. I didn't say anything about non-binary typical elders or there was more genders. And I also didn't say anything about capitalism.
I'm telling you what the queer Marxists say. They literally say, like, back before capitalism, all the world had all these different fucking genders.
That's not any. I didn't say anything like that. Back me up, chat. I didn't say anything like that. I'm just saying everything has an origin, and all of the multi gods and goddesses, the pantheons, have all gotten shrunk down, and now there's just this one. And then now there's 3 major religions that all bitch and moan about who's got the right way of worshiping that one.
No, the Jews created the other two, but we'll talk about that another day.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if maybe this guy goes into that. I'm going to keep looking. So we're going to be watching Esoterica tonight. Ooh, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about the dude. His name. Oh, shoot, I meant to have this pulled up. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Guy who.
Hey, well, you get it. I'm gonna get another super chat from Murphy's Pool. Why is it wrong to bring fruit on a date without the other person's consent? It contributes to grape culture. Mm-hmm.
Wait, what? It contributes to great culture?
Grape, G-R-A-P-E, grape culture.
Oh my God. So awful. Okay, so this name is Dr. Justin Sledge. He runs a channel called Esoterica. If you're interested in all kinds of occult knowledge and different kinds of the deep history of religions and spirituality, he's a really good. He does a lot of research. He has a PhD and a doctorate and an LMNOP. And like he's got like all the PHs and Ds. And he is a professor, and his wife is actually a rabbi. And I found that to be very interesting. So
feminist rabbi.
Yeah, I know. But
Great.
He doesn't ever go into politics or things. He seems to me, from anything I've heard him speak about, he seems very middle of the road. He is not woke in any way that I have found. So, but I do enjoy his channel. He can tend to be a little dry, but this particular series I've enjoyed quite a lot. So, but we're going to start with the wife of Yahweh, the goddess, consort, or wife of Yahweh. I thought, let's start there, and that's going to prime our pumps for this really interesting deep dive into the history of Israelite spirituality, which will lead us to the Kabbalah, because he is calling it Kabbalah because it is the occult knowledge of Judaism.
So basically, we're going back to like the origin. We are going to back to the origin of Jews to understand the development of Kabbalah.
Because Kabbalah came from their ancient mysticism. It's where it originated. It's one of the few things that was carried forward.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I think this is going to be great. I think
really
this is we're going to be doing a multi-part series on Jewish magic.
Yeah, I think this week and next week, I think we'll cinch it up really well. And then next week, so I can find a quick, this is what Kabbalah, how it all works and stuff. Because the ones I found of that are like 20 to 30 minutes.
You know what, Reagan? I said the same thing. Jennifer was explaining this to me before we got started, and I said, "Oh, maybe Amalek can come and watch
That'd be really cool."
I think that'd be really cool. Now, before we get started, there are a bunch of people here tonight, and we want to welcome everyone to the show. This is a show that Jennifer and I do on Tuesday nights, where we don't talk about the news or politics unless we're doing it sarcastically and with humor, and acknowledging that everything's fucked up and we're all going to die and all that stuff. And so, we deal with on this show we talk about the big questions of life, the meaning of life, magic, crystals, tarot cards, astrology, Jewish magic, things like that. We talk about aliens and conspiracy theories. We talk about things that are just for fun. And I want to make clear because we've already had someone in the chat. No proselytizing. You are allowed to be a Christian. You are allowed to love Jesus, but we are not Christians, and we are not going to become Christians. Jennifer was raised in a Christian cult. No proselytizing. We don't come into your church. My husband just dropped something downstairs because I felt a big bang. And there was a clap or something, so I hope everything's all right. He's gonna have to fend for himself. I don't know what the fuck
Maybe he
just
just
happened.
fixed your
But,
tech
like,
issue.
yeah, maybe Victor just fixed the tech issue by like whatever the fuck he just did. But no, like we don't come into your church and to tell you what to do, and you will not come into our spiritual fun time together and tell us to be Christians, because the answer is going to be politely no, with love, keep it to yourself.
And the more
All
I
right.
learn about the history of Christians, the history of Judaism, the history of all of these, the more I'm convinced that Christianity is a bit of a psyop. And I'm not trying to be insulting, but it's still, it's like a lot of this is just, and I am going to sound like a Marxist, just 3, 2, 1. It is making money. It's all about who's in charge and who has power. And I hate to say, I'm not trying to sound like a Marxist, like, because I am a capitalist myself. I love capitalism, but it is all about power. And man, what did we just say? What did I say last movie night? There are 2 things men do with everything. They either weaponize it or make it about sex. And that's true for religion as well.
Damn. Well, I want to get Amalek on a show with you just to explain to you the whole thing about like Jesus being a Jewish psyop, just because I think you'd find it really interesting. And I think you'd also appreciate Amalek. I think that he would be able to teach this to you in a way that is not going to be.
I think he's the guy I was thinking about, because I remember you had someone on who is who was like, he was the first time I think you heard this concept is from him.
No, you're talking about Adam Green.
That was Adam Green.
Heard it from other people, but Adam's really, really into it. But Amalek does a better. Love Adam. He's very handsome. I like doing streams with him because he's interesting and he's very, very smart. Okay. But Amalek explains it better and more succinctly than Adam does. Because I think it's because Adam's head is in like all the details of it all the time. Whereas Amalek has had a lot of practice explaining it to dumb people who don't understand. And if he can do it to dumb people, he can sure as shit teach you. Okay.
I'm not sure how to take that, but okay.
No, I'm saying that he has taught people that are far less intelligent than you about the origin of these, and he just does it in just like this beautiful way where he knows how to frame things and he knows how to get. He's just like very, very good at it. So
I appreciate that.
Come on.
All right, let's get going. Let's learn about the wife of Jesus. I'm sorry, Yahweh, who I think became Jesus or something.
And let's hope that the sound doesn't come through the video, whatever the sound issue is that StreamYard is gracing us with tonight. But hopefully,
I think you've cleared up. Has Karlyn cleared up, you guys? I think you have.
They're still going back and bitching and complaining. So I don't know. We're gonna give it a try, and we're gonna watch the video. And if you have thoughts about the sound, I don't know. Let us know if the sound is skipping for you guys.
Monotheism has arrived at the concept of a singular God, often by 2 distinct means. One, by addition from nothing. Theologians and philosophers start from no gods and argue for the existence of one such being, and then the impossibility of there being any other such beings. These arguments stretch all the way back into the ancient Greek world and have endured through the works of theologians through the centuries. However, another mechanism has also been long at work in monotheism. This is monotheism through subtraction. That is to say, starting with a panoply of divine beings and very slowly demoting them, consolidating them, and erasing them such that only one supreme being remains. And something like this process certainly happened among the ancient Israelites, with various divine beings such as El, Baal, Mot, Yam, Lotan, all of these beings ultimately vanishing off through demotion, consolidation, and erasure through the millennia. But perhaps the one most conspicuous god lost in the process of the elevation of Yahweh as the sole cosmic deity was the erasure and demonization of what was likely, or perhaps, the wife consort, Asherah. Yeah, it seems that the national god of the ancient Israelites may have, or even likely had, a wife or a consort, and she may have been systematically demoted and then ultimately erased from history. But what do we actually know about this goddess, Asherah, And what is the evidence that she was, in fact, the wife of Yahweh, the wife of the deity that simply became God? Make sure to subscribe here to Esoterica for weekly explorations of topics in esoteric history or just lesser known dimensions of religious history. And if you'd like to support the work of providing evidence-backed and free, accessible content like this episode, I'd hope you consider checking out some of the cool merch that we have or supporting us on our Patreon. If you're new to the study of esotericism, make sure to check out my study guide for a reliable lay of the land. And if you're interested in actual historical books on topics in the occult and the mystical, check out Esoterica Rare Books, our bookshop. You can find all those links in the description and in the pinned comment below. But now, let's explore Asherah, the lost wife of God. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.
One thing I like about him is he seems very unbiased in a lot of his. He just gives you what he learns, and he's not trying to convert or make anybody right or wrong. He just is like, here are the facts. This is how it became, and I really like that approach.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not convinced of his unbiasedness yet. I feel like I've been so disappointed lately by so many people that anyone wearing a little fucking hat, I'm like, you need to prove yourself to me. And like, I feel like that's really unfair because I don't want to judge you because you're wearing a little hat. It's not your fault, but like, I just don't trust you until you prove your worthiness to me. But that's also probably true of like, Black people and other things. I'm doing my very best to become like the racist fucking uncle at Thanksgiving on this show.
You're doing well. You're almost there, and it's. I mean, we still got a couple weeks till Thanksgiving, so I mean, you've got time. I think you can make it. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, we had a super chat too come in.
Oh, we had a super chat. Sorry, Jack. What in the wide world of the weird side of YouTube is going on here? Hey, we're just hanging out and talking about Jews and Jewish magic and not being anti-Semitic. Jack, welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Well, I'm a spiritualist, so I love all religious and spiritual research. So, and now you will too.
This episode is actually part of an ongoing series here on the channel of the history of the ancient Israelite god, Yahweh. Now, I've already done a couple of episodes about the origins of Yahweh and the development toward monotheism, if you want to check out those videos before getting to this one. But in a painfully brief summary of those episodes, Yahweh seems to have been a deity imported into the Canaanite pantheon from the south at some point in the late Bronze or early Iron Age, who would then go on to meteoric success as the national god of the Israelites, and for billions of people, just, well, God. This warrior storm deity would be assimilated to the chief of the Canaanite pantheon, El, just God, set into conflict with another storm deity, Baal, with elements of both incorporated into the composite picture of Yahweh as he appears in Israelite cultic and religious life. Following the destruction of the northern Israel kingdom in 722 BCE and Judea in 586 BCE, it appears that Yahweh henotheism or monolatry would eventually transform into something like monotheism during the Babylonian exile. Again, this is all just a very, very short summary of a much more complex process that I've actually outlined in much more detail in those previous episodes on Yahweh. So again, make sure to check those out. But let's rewind a second. Recall how Yahweh would become assimilated into the larger Canaanite pantheon, especially by being conflated to a significant degree with the grandfatherly chief of that pantheon, El, whose name just means, well, God. Basically, if you've ever imagined God as a kind of bearded old man sitting on a throne,
Hey, hang on, what was that?
You kids and your freaking acronyms. Lucy was asking, are you the same Jennifer from AWBJ?
If you don't know what AWBJ is, you're probably not the same Jennifer. I feel like other people could come up with the name Jennifer too.
There are lots of Jennifers on YouTube, actually, and I've Googled myself, which is fabulous. I highly suggest
Oh,
it.
no.
But I'm actually not anywhere to be found on YouTube or Google. Well, no, that's not true. I am on a couple things I'm in the title on and on YouTube, but yeah, I don't know what that is. So
Yeah, this is 700 years before Christ. Why are you going so far back too far? Because we don't think it is too far. So relax.
there's no such thing as too far. History is history.
Yeah, history is history.
Basically actually imagining the Canaanite god El.
Not everything has
and
to
in
do
some
with
sense,
Christ, you guys.
Not
the
everything is
youthful
about you.
warrior god Yahweh. But this assimilation had a kind of strange effect to it, a bug or a feature depending on how you want to look at it. Our earliest linguistic and epigraphic evidence actually presents Yahweh as, again, a youthful warrior storm god, manifesting as a powerful thunderstorm. He's sometimes referred to as the rider on the clouds. But as a youth, this deity doesn't appear to have a consort or a wife, much like the Canaanite god Baal, who mostly actually just hangs out, and by hangs out with, I mean rampages with his fierce virgin sister Anat. In fact, Baal doesn't even have his own house until much later in the development of his myth cycle, apparently living in his parents'
Amalek's
basement.
here. Awesome.
Oh, hey!
Awesome. We're looking forward to your opinions on the episode tonight, Amalek. We appreciate you being here.
I'm glad you approve of Dr. Sledge. Thank you. I was getting some grief, sir.
But he hates Amalek. Dr. Sledge, he actually knows who you are. Hang on. He actually has your reputation preceded you, or are you just saying in general?
Are you talking to me? Wait.
I'm saying to Amalek. Also, Dr. Sledge is dope. I've learned a lot from him, but he hates me for being actually anti-Semitic. But that's okay. He's a good scholar. So but I'm asking, like, does he actually know who you are, or are you saying in generalities? He banned him.
Oh no. Well, I hate to say I probably have a guess as to why. You should send him the link. Have him come on.
Amalek, do you want to come on and talk to us and watch this with us? You don't have to use your face, obviously. On my main account, I used to talk on Gnostic Informants account. Oh, Jesus. Well, let us know if you want me to drop the link in the chat. You can come on and talk with us if you want.
Good job, Baal. But early on, Yahweh was in a similar situation. He was a divine bachelor. But with his assimilation to the fatherly deity El, Yahweh seemingly inherits, as it were, the consort wife of El, known in Ugaritic mythology as Atherat and cognate in Hebrew as Asherah. But this was a complicated relationship, to say the very least. And
Maybe
it
next week.
ultimately ended
Maybe
in
next
divorce
week.
between Yahweh and Asherah, with Asherah becoming just someone that Yahweh used to know. Indeed, of the 40 or so mentions of Asherah in the Israelite literature of the Hebrew Bible, what we overwhelmingly learn is that some Israelites made shared cultic space for both Yahweh and Asherah in some form, and others, especially the ones that were editing the Hebrew Bible as it's come down to us, especially the Deuteronomist, they found this a cultic outrage and an abomination that should be driven from Israelite cultic practice. But before getting to the Israelites, let's explore the development of Asherah in the centuries before Israelites, and indeed in the centuries before even Yahweh appeared on the scene.
Do you remember when we did
Start,
the
what does
invention of
this name,
Satan?
Asherah?
Hang on. Go ahead.
Remember when we did the show, The Invention of Satan?
Yep.
And one of the major gods that they use, of course, is Baal. And I've just found it interesting that in the pantheon of the ancient, I believe it was the Canaanites that he was talking about, they just kind of picked and chose who the good guy and the bad guy is going to be. And then they, of course, fucked off the wife. Like, she just disappeared. And he talks about that more a lot later. But just listen for anybody who's not in the back. Like, listen for these names. They should sound familiar to you somewhat by now with all of the research we've been doing the last year. Just saying, there will be a test later. I'm kidding. There's no test.
It's be a test.
No, just kidding.
Damn.
Ashratu, Asherdu, Atherat, as it appears in the various forms in the ancient Near East. What does this name even mean? Well, that question remains pretty vexed by scholars. An earlier generation of scholars held that the name was some version of Athiru Yami, something like she who treads upon the sea. But this form is actually never attested, and it seems too late a form considering just how early she actually appears in the historical linguistic record. Further, another reading attempts to see this as a root that means something like wife or consort. But again, this form also isn't attested and it doesn't have any precedent in Semitic languages otherwise. However, a form that is attested in Phoenician, Akkadian, Aramaic, and Ugaritic is something like Aleph Tav Resh, which does mean something like holy place or sanctuary. And thus her name actually may mean something like she of the sanctuary. Though, again, the exact meaning of her name remains mysterious, much in fact like the name Yahweh. We don't really understand completely how this name Yahweh developed either. But so far as we can tell, Asherah first appears in history in a Sumerian votive offering to Hammurabi in the mid-18th century BCE. Yeah, that Hammurabi. Hammurabi's code Hammurabi. And so this is about 800 years or so prior to the earliest possible mention of an Israelite polity or the appearance of Yahweh as a god on the Misha stele. But in this votive offering, we have a mention of Asherah in her Akkadian name form, Ashratu, where we learn that she is thought of as the Lady of the Mountain. She has a kind of erotic aspect to her. She's known as the Lady of Voluptuousness and Happiness.
The
She's
Lady
considered to
of
be the
voluptuousness
daughter-in-law
and
of the
happiness. That's
heavenly
what.
Sumerian
You
deity
know what?
An.
You know what? That's what I'm gonna. Every time someone calls me fat from now on, I'm gonna go. I am a lady of voluptuousness and happiness, motherfuckers. So there ain't
Hell
shit
yeah.
you can do about it.
I definitely I had my coven once do an exercise of if you could make yourself into a goddess, what would you be the goddess of? It doesn't have to, it doesn't, don't take like, oh, I would be like Aphrodite or I'd be Athena. No, 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 no. You are the goddess Karlyn. What are you the goddess of? And that's
Voluptuousness and happiness.
I definitely have something about sex in mind, but also wine. And
Mhm.
maybe something about cooking or food or the hearth. I don't know. I'm very wholesome, sexy domestic goddess.
Perfect.
She shares some of the epithets of Ishtar, and that she is thought of as an Amorite deity. The Amorites were a northwestern Semitic people bordering on the old Babylonian Empire to the west, and eventually to the Israelites to the northeast. Indeed, Hammurabi himself was actually an Amorite, so maybe that's part of the reason why we see Asherah here. Further, it also appears that she was the consort of the head of the Amorite pantheon, Amuru, a title of whom was
She's
Lord
getting
of the
around,
Mountain,
ain't she?
the Bel Shadi, a similar epithet that Yahweh will eventually acquire as El Shaddai, God of the Mountain. Further in the text, she's also known as the Lady of Patient Mercy, who prays reverently for her spouse, his lady, further cementing her position as the consort of the Amorite.
He's lying. He's lying. Don't believe him. Amalek is top Jew of the internet. Don't let him fool you. It's definitely the top Jew.
High God. Further god lists, such as the An
Does he
equals
wear the
Ani
little hat
series, or
though?
the Tentir
He wears,
equals
yeah, he wears a little
Babilu, or
hat.
the
Yep,
Nippur
true.
god list, all detail just various positions with various Semitic epithets, which are now linguistically assured of the god Asherah. They list her along with various other spirits and entities and indicate that she did have a temple in Babylon known as the House of the Luxury of the Land. Indeed, her name is listed as part of the Akitu, or the Sumerian Akkadian New Year processions at the temple of Anu at Uruk, though her name is just listed along with a bunch of other deities, so she's not especially interesting.
I'm never going to remember these
Cylinder
names.
seals, which are these little
Oh
tiny
no, but every
bulbs
now and then
that
you'll hear
help
one
to
that's
mark out,
familiar.
authority
Yep.
and documents, also testify to the importance of her name acting as a kind of theoform in several different known examples. Another text referred to her as the Lady of the Steppe. This is another epithet probably associated with both her Amorite origins, but also it might have some afterlife connotations as well. She's mentioned in at least two other divinatory or esoteric texts, one in which we learn there existed an Uman Asherah,
All right, I take it back.
Asherah wizard, responsible
I
for
don't disagree
some
with the
sort
comment
of
about
divination.
medicine and
But in short, we don't really learn all that much about her
insurance.
at this earliest period. She seems to have been the consort of the Amorite high god, thought of as the daughter-in-law of the Sumerian deity of heaven An, and thus she enjoyed some popularity as such. She had at least one temple in Babylon and may have had some connection to divinatory practices, though what god didn't have some connection to divinatory practices?
Yeah,
That was
real.
extremely common in this period. A bit later on, she appears in a Hittite text. The Hittites were an Indo-European speaking people in Anatolia, what is now Turkey, who flourished from sometime around
Oh.
1700 to 1200 BCE. The Bronze Age collapse got rid of them, though the Hittite text seems to be a translation of another West Semitic text. In fact, the Hittites were some of the first folks interested in something like religious studies, studying, preserving numerous non-Hittite religious texts from their neighbors. In fact, an otherwise unknown Indo-European
Amalek, are you sure you don't want to just come on and talk? Because you seem to have a lot to say, and you can come on and talk. You don't have to sit in the chat. It's like Amalek right now is like the uncle at Thanksgiving ranting in the chat about questions that no one asked. And well, I always do appreciate his knowledge. Maybe you should just come on and talk.
But also what he was saying about how there's no one God, it came from several. That's what we're learning. What people who don't know, and it's easier to show the beginning of it through the story. What is happening? Excuse me, Amalek. Jennifer is talking. Okay, hang on.
Don't interrupt a woman.
That's damn right. I know you don't know me, but you're about to. So anyway, but that's why we're kind of taking everybody through the story, is to explain, yeah, everybody that we know now just grew up going, there's one God, blah, blah, blah. It's part of everything. It's infested everything. But that's not how it always was. And I don't think that is really how it is. I don't know what spirituality Amalek has, but currently, or if he has any, and personally, it doesn't even matter. What I'm interested in here is the history of it.
All right. I'm hitting play now.
I do love what a troublemaker he is, though. That's very amusing.
Language was recently discovered among these Hittite religious studies collections, so that's kind of neat. But this text is a mythic narrative in which a Hittite version of Asherah, Ashertu, attempts to seduce an otherwise unnamed storm god, seemingly Baal, but he rebuffs her and he reports her salacious activity to her husband, El Cornisa, whose name is actually a composition of the Semitic phrase something like El, creator of the earth, who informs the storm god to sleep with her after all in order to humiliate her. The storm god does so, mocking that he's actually killed 77 out of her 88 children, and this causes her to go into a cycle of mourning for 7 years.
Yeah, I would think so.
The text then breaks off with El Cornisa now plotting with Ashertu against the storm god, who now has Ishtar's help somehow, with the text breaking off again into fragments. But again, we find Asherah as a consort to the chief god here, El Cornisa, displaying an erotic element with a storm god, but now bearing divine children and in a complicated relationship with that storm god. But of course, our greatest source for understanding the goddess Asherah is from the Ugaritic archives, which were destroyed and then preserved precisely by that destruction sometime around 1185 BCE during the Bronze Age collapse. The same collapse that took out the Hittites and probably created the power vacuum that allowed for the rise of smaller polities like the Israelites. There we find 3 chief sources for information on Asherah, known in Ugaritic as Atherat: the Keret or Kirta myth, the Baal cycle, and then just a miscellaneous grab bag of various mentions. The myth or epic of Kirta or Keret follows that unfortunate son of El who's been widowed 7 times. He's now childless and he's the last of his family line. Desperate for an heir, El in a dream instructs him to wage war against the city of Udum to force the king there to give his daughter or granddaughter, it's not clear in the text, Haria to him in marriage. And ultimately he stops along the way to a shrine of Atherat, offering her gold and silver if he's to be successful. And ultimately he is successful, and he and Haria are married and have 2 sons and 6 daughters. However, Kirta ultimately reneges on his promise to the goddess Atherat to pay her that gold and silver as tribute after his marriage, and all hell breaks loose. Atherat promptly curses him and apparently his eldest son, Yatzib, who Atherat herself had nursed, with a terrible fever illness. His children intercede on his behalf with the gods, and eventually El does side with Kirta, noting that the vow he made in the beginning was ludicrous in the first place. Eventually that eldest son attempts to overthrow Kirta, who then Kirta curses, before the text finally breaks off with Kirta and his fate ultimately unknown, though some scholars
This is also dramatic. This is just like the Anunnaki video where it was
Yeah.
like they got into a boxing match and he bit off his dick and like all this shit. It's like, and then he slept with this one's wife, and then this one slept with a human, and then they concocted the humans, and then they slept with the human. It's like what the fuck, man?
That's exactly what I was thinking as well. It's like, wow, I wonder how much of this came from Anunnaki lore like it's all just all this complicated soap opera stuff. And the Greek gods pantheons was the same.
Created the Jews. Hang on, the Anunnaki created the Jews. Real.
Wait, what? Where are we?
Man.
What did we? Are we
Oh,
talking to
you
me
want to come on? Oh, you want to say something now? Okay, hang on. I'll DM you the link.
Oh, he's gonna yell at me. He's like,
he's not gonna yell. He's gonna be very nice. You're gonna like him. He's gonna be very, very nice.
I'm just saying, don't explain everything.
I just knew this was gonna happen. I was like, Amalek is gonna have something to say. He's gonna have. Okay, I just DM'd you the link. It's like he's not gonna be able to restrain himself in the chat.
Oh.
This is like his favoriteest thing in the world, Jennifer.
Well, I'm not trying to. The thing is if he understands the premise of the show, we're not trying to prove anybody right or wrong.
Oh,
We're
he's
just
gonna try to prove
talking
people
about
wrong. No. He's gonna try to prove. Just let him. He's very smart. You're gonna like him. Okay, just relax.
I
He's
should
very.
have got some whiskey today.
You
I
can
can
go
feel
get
it.
some whiskey. It's fine,
I don't have any whiskey. I should have got some.
man.
Trying to dry out. I've been self-medicating lately.
You're gonna like him. He's very, very nice. Just he'll like you because you're not Christian. You left a Christian cult. You're gonna be like one of his favorite people.
Oh, good. I hope so.
Maybe not.
But I
Favorite,
mean,
but like
I would say that the Anunnaki invented, like, they were kind of the basis of all religions, because they were the original pantheon that led to all the other gods and stories, and they're all kind of similar. They're all, and just like any other game of telephone, all the cultures in the world are swapping these stories.
man, where is
Right.
Amalek? Get your ass on the stream.
We'll just go ahead and play it until he shows up.
Oh, here he is.
probably-
Here he is. Okay. Amalek, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
Cool.
Hello.
Do I sound fine? I haven't
Yes,
used
you
my mic for a little bit. Cool. Yeah. So the reason that you're like thinking like, oh, is this sci-fi? It sounds like sci-fi, or it's like related to like our creation story. Is that basically like all these stories like this? The best way to think of them is the ancient world's version of sci-fi. Like if you know about the Book of Enoch, like that's the best way to describe what Enoch was in their perspective. Is the way we view sci-fi today, right? So we know you have all these like sci-fi movies that explain like origins of the universe, or actually that we're seated on another planet and all this other stuff. That's how they would have thought of that stuff back then. Is kind of like we think of sci-fi now. It would
It's
have
their
occupied this-
entertainment.
Yeah,
like their
yeah.
soap opera. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have
Totally.
occupied like the same thing. And the way that they talk about like battles in the heavens and things like that, that literally to them back then they would have conceptualized that the way we conceptualize outer space. They didn't think of heavens as like another dimension in like the way we think when we say the word heaven. When they thought of heavens, they literally thought about it in the sky above, like what we would consider outer space. So when the gods are fighting, they're not fighting in like another dimension or whatever in the heavens like we think today. What they're actually fighting over is in the sky or whatever. So it was like sci-fi battles. You know what I'm saying? Like
Well, just like with the
alien
Vinyana.
invasions and things like that.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Vinyana and how they fought in the skies over the kingdoms, like literally ships battling each other in the sky and at night even. And so, yeah, for the ancient world, the most mystical thing was everything outside of Earth, and it could encompass everything outside of Earth.
Yeah,
If
which is
that's
why
where you're
the
going.
yeah, and that's why the celestial bodies are all related to these things. That's why they relate them to, because to them, outer space and up to the sky and like that's where the heavens were. So that's why they related them to those things.
Right. Not that you're going to go to heaven, or that they were actually battling in the throne of God heaven kind of heaven. But yeah, no, I think a lot of it gets lost in the translation, and especially when people are trying to make it make sense to say what are the words, the illiterate minds of certain time periods. They had to keep it in simple language that brought it down or elevated it in ways that made it so abstract or so earthbound that it changed the meaning of it entirely.
Yeah. I love Dr. Sledge is awesome. I watch these guys. I watch this guy's videos. He's Jewish and he knows about this stuff really well. He puts on some good content on Kabbalah and like macabre mysticism and things like that.
Yeah, I was looking into his macabre stuff. Like, I'm looking at his Jewish Mysticism Kabbalah series right now, and I've got through the second one, and I can't wait to get to the third. I've seen a lot of his stuff. He's wonderfully just well-read, astute. He seems to just have all the pieces, and that's one of my favorite things about him. And he doesn't have the judgmental, this is right and this is wrong. He's very academic about it, which I love.
What did you say he banned?
Well, I was just gonna say. So it's like, my perspective is this. I'm interested in this from an academic perspective. However, like politically, I think this stuff should be banned or treated in the way he treats it, where it's looked at from an academic perspective. I don't think it should be legal for you to go up and tell people that we're in the end times, Jesus is coming back tomorrow, and it says so because of this book that's based on like fraud. The book is based on fraud. Like the book of Daniel, just as an example, it's the dating that they have it at it's backdated, okay, and it's fulfilling prophecies accurately up to a point because of that backdating, and then it gets everything wrong afterwards because it was written later than it was. So it was like writing history and claiming it was prophecy. Okay,
He actually brings
that's
that
fraud.
up, which is fascinating. Yeah, it's really impressive. Very cool.
Yeah. So I think that basically, like, the reason he banned me is because that's my position, right? And I kind of say, like, what were these religions created for? Well, they were created to control people, right? So therefore, and who created them, right? So both of those things is kind of where he disagrees with me on, but that's fine. None of these academics whose work I use for my ideas would even remotely agree with my politics. So I can't even begin to do that.
That's the nice thing about having an academic discussion is if you keep the politics out of it, you actually will learn something instead of getting angry with each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I'm a Jesus mythicist, for example, and I like use a lot of Richard Carrier's work, not entirely, but a lot of it. And if he obviously he's like a huge like anti-Nazi liberal, right? So or anti-nationalist liberal, like he's like a leftist, like a giga leftist, right? So there's lots and lots of experts like that, and I would say basically no experts in any field share my politics. So it would be kind of ridiculous to try to like hold them all to that standard. I would basically never be able to use any of our like advanced sciences or anything like that. You'd basically become an idiot and be like a Luddite if you hold all experts to have, they have to have my politics too. It's stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I like your point of view, Amalek. I'm on board.
Okay. I told you were going to like him and it was going to be just fine. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Amalek, feel free to interject if you have anything to say.
Do believe that ultimately all of his children die along with him, aside from a last daughter who becomes his heir. But Atherat's role in this text seems again to be that of the consort of the high god El, but also conspicuously responsible for somehow attaining a royal heir at her own shrine. Indeed, she even acts as their wet nurse. The children of Kirta are nursed by Atherat, something along the lines of the fearsome god Anat. But she's also clearly powerful. Atherat's very clearly powerful, and she won't stand her promises that she doles out to be betrayed. While El seems to be the chief actor in some sense, in another sense, the real power behind the throne, at least as it were, at least in terms of the production of divine progeny, seems to be Atherat. Of course, the Baal cycle is perhaps the most famous text of the Canaanite religion as it survives to us, and it gives us our best insight into the religious sensibilities of that region in the late Bronze Age. Here we have the rise of Baal, his war with the sea and death, Yom and Mot, the creation of his palace, and the ultimate triumph of his will as the ruler of the gods. In fact, I've done a whole episode on Baal and the Baal cycle if you want to learn more about this ancient Canaanite deity. And it's in this cycle that we learn the most about ancient Atherat, ancient Asherah. And in the contest with Baal and the sea, Yam, she's actually referred to as a goddess and is sympathetic with the sea. It's actually one of her sons. And indeed, one of her epithets is Atherat of the sea.
I like the boobs.
And she seems to be at least...
I know, and especially how she's like
seemingly doing her laundry in the sea, winking seductively at El, though remaining very ladylike and domestic, taking
Yeah,
with her the
very
signs of
ladylike.
domestic propriety, her
Yeah.
spindle whorl.
Real.
But her relationship
Indeed.
with Baal is
Clearly a different definition back
surprisingly
then.
complex, and she seems to often be actively resisting him. And that makes some sense given that she is the mother of all the gods, including Yam and Mot, the sea and even death, and the consort of El, all of which are subject to hostility by Baal. Indeed, Yam will be defeated by Baal, death will be met with a kind of detente, and El eventually will be overthrown in the Baal cycle, with Baal becoming the
Ooh,
lord of all
Seeker,
the
we'll
gods.
get into that.
Hence
I
his
see his
name,
comment from X.
Baal. Thus, the Rabitu, or the
Okay,
Queen
cool.
Mother, as she's known in Ugaritic, logically has a tense relationship with the storm god. And that's just what we see when the horrible Anat and Baal approach her, such that she will intercede on Baal's behalf for the construction of
Look at
Baal's
the
own
teeny
palace.
tiny
She
chest.
recoils in
What
horror,
is
her
that?
voice breaks, and her face breaks out
We
in
went from
anxious
torpedo
sweat at the
boobs.
sight of this fearsome brother and sister duo. However, her dignity is preserved as she travels to the tent of El. There she rides astride a donkey, while the fearsome virgin Anat is made to walk alongside
Maybe
on
that's why
foot.
she's small, because she's a
Ultimately,
virgin.
Atharat's
She
position
hasn't
to
fed
El
children
is
yet.
granted, and Kothar Vachasis grants the great palace of Baal to be built. But again, Baal and Atharat only reach a kind of detente with her rejoicing when Mot, or death, seemingly strikes down Baal in their contest. Indeed, with Baal dead, she, as Rabitu, or Queen Mother, is actually able to elect one of her sons as the new head of the divine family, a situation that she clearly enjoys. And she elects Athar the Terrible. But Baal emerges from death and slaughters the many children of Atharat, leaving an unclear number alive, if any. Indeed, this section seems to echo part of that Hittite epic that I just mentioned a bit ago, where the storm god brags about killing 77 of the 88 children to mock the goddess. But how or if these texts are connected isn't in the least bit clear. But the Atharat of the Baal cycle is clearly one of her being the Lady of the Sea. This connection with the sea, however, isn't really clear. She's the Rabitu, or the Queen Mother, and thus the Mother of the Gods, as consort of El. She also has a clearly erotic nature, but also pretty clearly domestic, washing divine laundry and bearing her spindle whorl. Her connection with Baal and Anat is tense, to say the least, and she certainly doesn't seem to be interested in seducing him as it occurs in the Hittite narrative. Though while she's clearly connected to progeny of the gods and of royal figures, there's actually very little evidence of her as a general fertility or mother goddess, whether it's people or agricultural either. Though such a conclusion wouldn't be unreasonable if we're being honest. In addition to these cycles scribed by Elimelech, they're all written by one scribe actually, about a dozen or so other smaller fragmentary myths, ritual texts, and god lists also survive from Ugarit, and they preserve some further information about Athirat as well. Though, to be honest, nothing much is added to what we've already learned. Athirat is the progenitor of the gods, she nurses various divine beings, she possesses a maternal aspect, she was actively the object of worship at Ugarit, with various sacrifices, including animal sacrifices. Though I should mention that a previous generation of scholars have often linked her with lions and serpents, you still see this repeated online in places, but more recent scholarship has rejected this iconography as basically a case of mistaken identity.
They're
Of course,
trying to make her
Asherah is most well known
Real
from
quick,
the
two
appearance
things I'd
of
say
that
about
term
this.
in the Hebrew Bible or the Christian.
So one thing that I really like about the way he does this is he kind of like presents what the consensus is, and it's constantly evolving. And from he always knows when things are outdated. So like that whole snake thing and all that stuff, he goes over like where they updates the archaeology on that on another video, and he goes through all that because that's something that I previously believed or whatever, because that's what was the previously expert opinion, was that there was like this snake worship stuff, and then you see it coming back in the Moses story, basically is where that line of reasoning came in, and that's basically been changed.
I was going to ask if they were trying to equate her in some way to Eve.
Yeah, and then also, like I said, yeah, and then later it appears in like the Moses dueling the snakes
Oh yeah,
story and stuff like that. Yeah.
staffs turning into serpents.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to. There used to be like scholarship and things like that that was basically saying like this was like a poetic retelling of that. But anyway, that was the first thing I want to say. But the other thing was, one thing that is kind of important here is two things to really understand: is the female goddess that he's talking about. She wasn't just like his consort or whatever. She was like the goddess of gods, if that makes sense. So she's literally like birthing gods. That's what
The
she
Queen
does.
Mother.
Yeah, does that make sense? So she would have been the god, like the mother god or of multiple gods. And Yahweh himself is like a minor storm deity. Okay. He's the local Judean god. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
this would be like the Greeks choosing a very obscure god, not one of the main gods of the pantheon. It would have been an obscure minor deity. And the reason that that's the god or whatever that becomes God, quote unquote, is because Jews, the religion, basically henotheistically says, their claim is that they're monotheistic, but really what they are is they were henotheistic. And henotheistic means that you're polytheistic, right? But that you choose one God, or that one God within the polytheism chooses you. And that's how Judaism starts. What you would kind of call like Yahwehism or like proto-Judaism. That's how it starts, is as a henotheistic cult of Yahweh within this Canaanite pantheon. And that specific God is just the local God of that area that they are from. That's what it is.
Oh,
I was trying to think of there was a similar cult that started, or I don't know if it was around the same time or much later, because I'm not as well versed in the timeline. But I was going to say Mithras, the cult of Mithras is kind of similar to is like the contemporary to the Jesus stuff that was starting, because his story was like Horus's story became Jesus' story. It was all the same virgin birth, so it's kind of a similar avenue. I think is what I'm hearing from you with the Yahweh cult.
Yeah, it's like evolution. What I would say is, in the same way you kind of understand nostalgia bait movies in Hollywood, right? So retellings are already stories that you know what I mean? I think that they just put up
Yeah.
like the 1000th version of Dracula ever, or
Yeah, and
like,
Frankenstein.
that's what's going on. That's what we're
Okay.
seeing. It's iterations on things. So Mithras is basically it's what it is. It's Persian mysticism, Zoroastrianism, and
Yeah.
end times eschatology mixed with Western Neoplatonism. That's what Mithraism was, basically.
Was the Western an influence at the time?
Of what? Of Mithras?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it became a soldier's cult within Rome, basically.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, where
Gotcha.
where
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
basically they were kind of like claiming that this person's an incarnation of Mithras, and that they were kind of like Romanizing it, is basically what it was.
Ah, yes. God
Okay.
stealing. We love this.
So I just want to make sure I have this clear. So the reason that Yahweh is like the god is it would be like a roughly equivalent to like if he was like the god of New Hampshire, and New Hampshire created some weird cult thing around the god, but it
Yes.
just, like, happened to be because he was the god of New Hampshire, not because he did anything, and then it spread.
Correct. But in this case, New Hampshire is literally the capital of the home of the people that we know today as Jews.
Yeah.
It's the heart and their home area. Now they colonize and spread out throughout all this area, and like the story of what happens with them when the Greeks take over, the Romans take over, the Persians take over, the Assyrians take over. Like that story is always changing. They're constantly like always living outside of Judea and inside of like Israel, the whole area. Like they're constantly like expanding and retracting their population. However, the heart of their population and the core of their culture is Jerusalem. It's very, very important, and that's the local deity there.
Nice.
Okay. Great way to pick a god. Just happens to be local, a neighbor, if you will.
Yeah, it would be like if like the god of because that's the other thing too, is where they're at is like the backwater, by the way, of all these places. Like the northern Syrian areas are more fertile, and the Egyptian areas are more fertile, and like they're like the backwater place, right, where really the religion is kind of the economy, if that makes sense. And it becomes like a religious-based economy, while other economies in their local areas are like actually producing things. So it was almost like the ancient version of the first Hollywood. If
I was gonna say it's like put it contemporarily. It could almost be like the Superman versus the Batman people.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's exactly, or it's like DC versus Marvel. Yeah.
Awesome.
Old Testament. But as we'll see, exactly what the Asherah of the Hebrew Bible is or isn't really clear at all. Mentioned about 40 times in the Israelite library known as the Hebrew Bible, Asherah is also known in the feminine plural, Asherot, and in the masculine plural, Asherim. Yeah, the masculine plural. And it seems to refer to a range of things: trees, poles, some type of specific wooden objects, perhaps a statue, along with perhaps a handful of reference to a goddess in this case. Further, the references to the Asherah aren't evenly distributed, with most of them occurring in the Deuteronomistic historians, specifically to explain the wrath of Yahweh or to call for religious reform, given that these apparently wooden objects are appearing in cultic sites or bamot, high places. These asherim or asherot could be made or even planted, suggesting they were something like trees or bushes, and could be hewed down and subject to burning, indicating perhaps their wooden nature. This association with trees, by the way, would continue in Greek and Latin translations of the Hebrew Bible, where they were variously rendered as something like groves. So the idea that the Asherah becomes sacred groves in the Septuagint. Such an understanding would actually be expressed in rabbinical Judaism as well. The Mishnah at Avodah Zarah 3:7 concludes that the Asherah is just a tree under which there is an idol placed, or per Rabbi Shimon, it's just any tree that's worshipped at all. But note, in all those cases, the Asherah is not a goddess. In many cases, they're just mentioned along, the Asherah are just mentioned alongside the destruction of altars to foreign gods, or simply Yahweh shrines outside the Jerusalem temple, though there was an Asherah in the Jerusalem temple. Grammatically speaking, they often occur in the plural with a definite article, the Asherah, the Asherahs. Most of them are references to the Asherot, are not specifically referring to a personal goddess, but seemingly to some cultic object, which, however, may have been associated with that goddess. We just don't know. However, this is just, as I said, less than clear. In some cases, Baal and Asherah, although again, often in the grammatical plural, Baalim, Asharim, are together mentioned as if they may be forms of those respective gods, but again, why are they in the plural? In fact, scholars have even noticed that many of the post-exilic texts often refer to the term Asherah, which is feminine in gender, with a masculine plural ending, Asharim, as a form of perhaps spiteful misgendering, or maybe just because they've forgotten that the word originally referred to a goddess at all. Asherah as a goddess might have just been forgotten by that point. However, glimpses of the goddess might persist. Makkah is actually removed from being queen mother for making a horrid thing for the Asherah by her son Asa, who cuts down that horrid thing and then burns it in the Kidron Valley. Does the relationship of Makkah as queen mother have some sort of relationship to the horrid thing she made for the Asherah? Also, again, she's the Rabitu in the Ugaritic mythology. She's herself a queen mother. Is there some connection here? Well, the question is as mysterious as it is tantalizing. In the prophetic duel between Elijah and the prophets of Baal, we also learn that there are some prophets of Asherah, but many scholars think this may have just been a scribal mistake, as the prophets of Asherah ultimately just disappear from the duel later on in the text. 2 Kings 17:16 also makes a singular mention of Asherah, again as some kind of cult object, and later in 2 Kings 18:4, we have the Asherah being destroyed with the bronze serpent of Moses because people were offering incense to them. So again, what exactly this
this is what I was
is
talking
it
about.
a goddess
Yeah.
or an image of a goddess
Totally.
or a tree? None of this is clear. By Josiah's time, we learn of an Asherah in the Jerusalem temple, which he drug out and
There's all
burned in
those
the Kidron
holding them
Valley.
turkey boobies.
Sorry, what is with the symbology of like the holding up of the boobs like they're like torpedo? I don't understand. Is it just like they're like we're feminine? Is it just like announcing themselves? Like
Well,
why?
they didn't have bras back then. They had to do something.
Well, I
I mean,
understand.
look at the older gal over here. They're like
Walking
down here.
around holding your tits up all day. Like that's impractical. Like, but why are they sculpting them like that? Is it just to be like, we are feminine, don't confuse us with the men? Because they're kind of like globs other than that. Like they're kind of like genderless other than that. And so it's like, you know what it might be like? It's like when the Did you know, like, back in the old days in England, when like it was really kind of taboo for a woman to be like on a stage in a play or something like that, they would paint the woman with one of their boobs out just to say this is actually a woman on the stage.
As far as I understand, and I'm sure if I'm going to tune in as well. As far as I understand, idols and carvings such as this, they would make the most prominent features that which is the most important to society. So, like in the old goddess figures, you've got the round belly and the round boobs because they are symbols of fertility. You've got the pregnant belly and then the boobs because you're going to pass on your lineage. You need that fertile female representation. It's also to bring that energy into yourself. If you are a woman, you want to have children, you want to have healthy children, and you want to be healthy, so they make them nice and plump too. In this case, I would imagine that the breasts are just really important to them, and that's, you notice there's not a lot of face, as you were saying. That seems to be the most prominent obvious thing. They don't particularly have a lot of other things, but if these are just little prayer idols, they just need them to stand up and they can just symbolize feminine energy or the goddess.
That one on the right is like really sagging too. Like that's
a crone. Yeah, she's
unfortunate. It's a crone. It's an unfortunate statue.
She's had several babies. She's like, now look, this is where you are. This is where you're going.
There's statues to Ben Shapiro's sister. That's what's going on here.
Oh my god.
That's what's happening here. The Jews were idol worshipping Ben Shapiro's sister ancestry. 3,000 years ago, Ben Shapiro's 1,000 generations Shapiro's back. This is her ancestors. When she wakes up in the morning, she Googles Yahweh cultist idols, and she looks at them on Google and she says, "My ancestor." And then she just
They had a prophecy. They had a prophecy of Ben Shapiro's big-titted sister.
Oh my god.
This is her.
Yeah. Okay.
But real quick, I don't think he's going to talk about this because this is something where we disagree. But he also, I don't know, he sometimes lends credence to this theory. But I subscribe to a guy named Jonathan Adler's theory. He's an archaeologist. He's Jewish as well, and he basically believes that what we know today as Judaism wasn't really finalized and put together, and the Bible wasn't compiled until way, way later than most scholars believe. And I subscribe to his theory, which puts it at about 150 to 250 BCE, which basically means all of what he's talking about, this whole this prehistory, I guess you could say, and this archaeology and all this other stuff, that this is stuff related to the Canaanites, and that what we know today, basically as Jews, did not become an actual thing until like I said, 250 to 150 BCE. And what happens is that they are essentially formed out of Hasmonean dynasty propaganda. Basically, it's a Jewish kingdom, and after they win their war, they do what we call the Josiah's reforms, which is what he was just talking about. And part of Josiah's reforms was removing all non-Yahweh cult stuff out of the temple, which is when they remove Asherah. So Asherah is removed in the story in the Bible, right, when Josiah's reforms come about. And in my view, what Josiah's reforms are actually doing is it's a mythological telling of the Hasmonean dynasties, like founding myth, basically. In the same way that like Athens has a founding myth, that all these places have a founding myth. Basically, this is like the Jerusalem city-state founding myth of the Jews. Is the best way to describe it. And what I'm saying is, as I'm saying, they're way backdating this. Like traditional scholars would tell you that, Asherah worship stopped in like 620, maybe like 640 BCE to 600 BCE, somewhere around there. But I think that basically like they are all doing they're backdating all that stuff and saying like, oh, look how old our stories are, basically.
Oh, for sure, because everybody has to be the first to come up with something. But he, in the next episode 2, which we'll do next. I'm sorry, we're still in Asherah, aren't we? We haven't even gotten into the actual, if we even make it to that.
We're gonna make it to that. We're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. He in his, what is the name of this series I sent you, Karlyn? I don't have my Discord up. The video link I sent you.
The introduction to Kabbalah and Jewish
Okay.
mysticism.
Okay, so we're going to be watching episode 1 of that tonight. In episode 2, it's the oh my gosh, the end of the world culty stuff that, oh my god, what is the word I even said earlier? Why does my brain always die right around this time?
Apocalyptic.
Thank you,
Yeah.
apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic
So
Judaism. Yeah, that's what I study. That's like I'm really focused on apocalyptic Judaism. That's what I study.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I hope you'll join us next week too, because he equates the modern version of Judaism as having combined with Zoroastrianism in the dichotomy of good and evil. And that's when everybody goes into one God and it became an apocalyptic religion. And he kind of goes through that in episode 2, which we're doing next week. So I'd love if you were there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
exactly how that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to say, Karlyn, about these figurines is the more simplistic figurines are usually for like the people who can't, they're like the discount deities. Like what people can't afford the nice, pretty sculpture ones. So they get like the 5-cent boob sculpture of the deity. Just so you know, that's why
That's a great point. That's why that's part of why there's so much talking shit on idols in their Bible, because basically what's happening is what you're seeing is you're seeing like Marvel versus DC. So what you're seeing is like, let's just say DC is the shittier version of comics. Okay. What you're seeing is you're seeing Marvel call DC shitty. Okay. So you're seeing, oh, we don't worship the Ashara any longer. She was cast out of the temple, and all that matters is one God, monotheist, like the one God Yahweh, right? And what you're seeing is you're seeing them try like pushing out the competition. Like that's the better way to understand these stories.
Sorry, go ahead, Karlyn.
Twitter. That nothing has changed. It's ancient shit talking on Twitter.
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing is new under the moon and stars, but
I fucking hate humanity. Can the comet just hit us already? This is like the worst.
Let's mothership. Let's bring on the Anunnaki. Let's get Nibiru back in here. Let's go. But
Man.
no, I mean, like these are the discount versions in terms of people who were poor, couldn't afford the pretty sculptures, so they got the cheaper, more rudimentary looking ones. So anyway, okay, I'm done. Let's move on.
Right. We had a super chat hang. Zero Carb Zen says, "Who is NMA? His voice sounds like that guy that joins Justin on Deconstruction Zone. Are you the same guy that joins Justin? Do you want to introduce yourself?"
No, I don't join. I watched Justin's show, and the show that I used to run over on Twitter was it was like I like accidentally stumbled upon Justin the same time I started doing the Twitter spaces, and I was like, oh shit, he's doing like the same thing I'm doing, and I came to check out his show, and I argue with the Christians in his chat from time to time. But no, I'm not. I've never been on his show or anything like that. He doesn't know who I am, and he probably thinks I'm an evil person or something.
Yeah, you can find him at need more Amalek on Twitter, or more Amalek on Twitter, something like that.
In Deuteronomy and in Kings do so much to efface Asherah as a goddess, so much more so than that of the chronicler, who may be actively obfuscating just that history, or frankly just doesn't even know it at all. While the Deuteronomist may be condemning and polemicizing against Asherah or her cultic symbols, the chronicler either has just actively engaged in full erasure of her, or again, that history is just totally lost to them, with now all mentions of Asherah occurring either in
like
the
that too,
feminine
actually.
or masculine plural
Very
forms,
feminine
now
goddess.
all plural. The
Animals,
prophets, who are famous
agriculture,
for their
children.
partisanship of Yahweh,
Beautiful.
are surprisingly silent on the question of Asherah or the Asherahs, with only 4 such mentions in all of the prophetic literature. Isaiah reflects back on the presence of the Asherahs and on a future without them. Jeremiah invokes the language of Hosea, actually, and is also seemingly looking backwards to past signs. And Micah is actually looking forward to a future destruction of the Asherahs and the cities that house them. Though, speaking of Hosea, some scholars have actually read the 2nd chapter of that book as a kind of a kind of bill of divorce between Yahweh and Asherah, though this reading is contentious, and I don't think it's been accepted by the consensus of scholars. Most scholars reading that as a bill of divorce between Yahweh and Israel. Regardless, with some 40 mentions of Asherah in various forms in the Hebrew Bible, we learn virtually nothing about any goddess here. Most mentions are of some cultic object or objects, perhaps a tree or a pole, placed on altars or near altars, including in the Jerusalem shrine. The word often occurs in the plural,
wonder
sometimes
if
with
the
even the
poll was a
definite article,
phallus.
and even in the
Hmm.
masculine plural with the definite article, again, perhaps as sardonic mockery. Perhaps only 3, maybe 5 at a stretch, but probably just 3 seem to imagine Asherah as a goddess, unlike Baal, which was certainly considered to be a god, and perhaps by them she was just forgotten or never really an important local deity. Again, Ugarit is really far to the north and quite a bit back in time. But certainly we have no traces of her being a mother or a fertility goddess, despite her association with trees, which remains ambiguous. Indeed, many scholars doubt on contextual and linguistic grounds there's just any goddess mentioned in the Hebrew Bible at all, though that's to be severely contradicted by the wealth of archaeological evidence which seem to indicate some kind of goddess was worshipped in the region. Though I and other scholars suspect that the discussion of the cult object and the goddess are probably just conflated in the discussion of the Asherah in the Hebrew Bible. Most important such reference seems to be that horrid thing made by Queen Asa's mother, Makah, again perhaps reflecting Asherah herself as a queen mother, at least in some kind of past life. But around the same time that Asherah is being demoted, erased, and forgotten in Judea, she seems to have been enduring just fine south of the region in what is now pre-Islamic Arabia. There's a collection of about a dozen monumental inscriptions in 3 of the major dialects of that language, which have survived and invoke Atherat as part of the astral triad of that region. Though with the lunar deities such as Wad and Am, Atherat may have been a kind of solar deity, though this is far from certain. Most of these inscriptions are just mentions of her name with regards to dedication, votive offerings, some temple restorations, and perhaps rededications. There's perhaps a month dedicated to her, and then just theoforms and names. While these South Arabian inscriptions tell us a little about Atherat and her worship in the region, they are in fact testimony to her cult persisting well south before the rise of Islam. And in effect, that would be all that we would know in terms of ancient Asherah in the world. But 2 extraordinary inscriptions discovered in the 20th century have seemed to have raised the shocking possibility that, despite the seeming cover up or erasure of Asherah in the Hebrew Bible, that she was, in fact, the wife or the consort of Yahweh. The
Dun,
site
dun,
at Khirbet el-Qum was
dun.
found shortly after being robbed and was published by Dever and can be dated to sometime in the middle of the 8th century BCE. Tomb 2, famous for its magic hand engraving, contains an inscription that reads something like, Uriyahu the Honorable has written this. Blessed is be Uriyahu by Yahweh, and because from his oppressors by his Yahweh, he has saved him. Written by Oniyahu, by his Asherah, and his Asherah. This fragmentary inscription is made all the more difficult by all the scratches and the soft stone around that abound in the area. One man's scratches, another man's Paleo Hebrew. But what we seem to have in this inscription is a mention of someone by the name of Uriyahu, that Yahweh, the forum is in his name, being blessed and saved by both Yahweh and the unusual form by his Asherah. Now, as you can imagine, this inscription has invited numerous readings, translations, and interpretations, but at the core, there seems to be general scholarly consensus that both Yahweh and his Asherah are objects of praise by Uriyahu. The question is, what is going on with that pronomial suffix, that his of his Asherah? More on that in just a minute. A slightly earlier inscription found way out in the Sinai at Kuntalit Adrud has a similar inscription and is found on 2 large vessels, or pithoi, and says something like, says Ashiyav, the king, say to so-and-so, and to Yavasa, and to blessed are all of you to Yahweh of Samaria, and to his Asherah. With the other reading, something like Amar Yav says to his Lord, it is well with you, I bless you by Yahweh of Teman, and by his Asherah, may he bless you and keep you and be with my Lord. Here we have localized versions of Yahweh, though the Sinai is pretty far removed from Samaria, again followed with that Asherah in that pronomial suffix form, his Asherah. Further, Pithos A features numerous images, including bovine nursing imagery, which sometimes is associated with Asherah and El, 2 seemingly seated entities with Egyptian best-like features near a seated harp player. Just how the imagery interacts with the inscriptions isn't clear, and there's a lot of debate. But what might all of this actually mean in terms of Yahweh and Asherah? The inscriptions seem to represent Yahweh and his Asherah doling out blessings. One inscription echoes the language of the priestly benediction, in fact. But exactly what is the Asherah of these inscriptions? Well, first off, there aren't really any known cases where a proper name takes such a pronominal suffix in classical Hebrew, so arguments have been made to just this effect. This just isn't a proper noun or a name. We're not dealing with a goddess in this situation, and thus she can't be wed or a consort to Yahweh. And thus, in line with all of this, the concept that the Asherah was some kind of cult artifact or some other kind of object in association with Yahweh. But do cultic objects provide blessings? While objects like the altar and the Ark of the Covenant in the Hebrew Bible do take such a pronominal suffix, they can't do it in such a way that they give out blessings. Persons give out blessings, and perhaps through the Ark, Yahweh dispenses blessings, but the Ark is itself not doing the blessing. And yet, given the iconography, there seems to be a kind of seated monarch and consort imagery at hand, which would indicate that we're not only reading about Yahweh, but actually seeing Yahweh and his Asherah in this imagery. But again, this is all just up for debate, and trust me, it is very much being debated and will continue to be so. Regardless, we don't really learn anything new about Asherah from these inscriptions, and the question of if these are inscriptions or evidence for Asherah as a kind of consort of Yahweh remain completely unresolved. However, and I'm slow to editorialize here on the channel, but if I'm being honest, if these inscriptions just didn't mention Yahweh specifically, let's say they just read El and his Atherat, Ra and his Hathor, or Zeus and his Hera, and I know those aren't exactly perfect or even good parallels, would anyone bat an eye? My worry is that theological bias and frankly scholars just being precious about this deity Yahweh are interfering with what seems to be the most simplest reading imaginable. Yahweh and his
I really
apparent
love him for
wife or
saying that.
consort Asherah are being sought out for blessings by
Yep.
pilgrims and by the dead in
Yeah,
these
real quick.
inscriptions.
So
That
this is
seems
so
to-
important. What he just said is so important. So we deal with this with Adam and his work and all the stuff that we do with like the Jesus mythicism and the deconstructing Christianity and how this all intersects with politics. And basically, to explain what he's talking about, very like how it relates to politics is like this. Right now, all of Judaism is built on this false idea that he just talked about, right? That, oh no, we've always been monotheistic. Oh no, it dates back super far and all this other
We've
stuff.
always been the chosen people.
Yeah,
For
the whole thing. Yeah, God said so. Okay. And what happens is so there's this foundation of this lie, okay? And Christianity is built on top of that. And it assumes that all of that is true. So the entire, basically, like what I would call theological studies, historical studies, all of these things, they basically rely on the story being true to some degree. They rely on, you know, seminaries, theological studies. Like, who cares about the Bible? Well, it's religious people. All these people, even the ones who say they're atheists or whatever, they're basically like culturally reliant or monetarily reliant on the religious people themselves, basically. Okay, so the religion, it's like a religion industry, is essentially what's going on. So
Yeah.
the entire like what I would call scholarly field of studying the Bible and the historicity of all the religion, Christianity and Judaism and Islam, all three together, it's all captured in a way that has been for 2,000 years, is what I would say. In the same way everyone understands like there's industry capture elsewhere and everywhere else, what I'm telling you is the first place that was ever captured is this like it came from the religions and it stretched out into all of our other societal places. The reason our society is so corrupt is because it came out of the religion like an octopus, and it spread its tentacles throughout everything, and it moralized everything into what we have today. So when people try to keep politics separate from religion, you're ignoring the core issue of how this happened and why we're here, which is this lie that's been basically tolerated. Because anyone who understands it knows it's a lie.
I think what you're really pointing to is very profound, and something that I've thought about a lot is the whole thing, and what you're talking about with corruption especially is based on we are better than you because of X, Y, and Z. And here's why we're better. And they have their little proof to back it up. Sometimes it's a holy manuscript, sometimes it's an idea or an idealism. Well, I don't want to get too much into it, but I think that it has to do with superiority. They have to be better. That's how they take control. That's how they justify doing things that they criticize other people for doing.
Yeah, I mean, look, like the God who created the universe picked them. Okay, so okay, in their lore, and they
Yeah.
actually believe that. Okay,
Remind
and
me to tell you about the church I grew up in someday, Amalek.
well, they actually believe this,
Oh
and
yeah.
they truly do, right? So from there, you can justify basically doing whatever you want, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it doesn't touch you. And then and especially if you add, then this is something I don't know. I don't think the Jews have a total equivalent to this, but especially with the Christian, if I screw up, all I have to do is go confess, eat a wafer, drink some wine, and I'm good. And that definitely made a lot of excuses for poor
Oh
behavior.
yeah. Well, and like, well, it's mutated and morphed throughout history, right? So like before that, it was even a worse version in like the Catholic indulgence system,
Oh
which was
God, yeah.
basically like, give the Pope money if you want
Yep.
to go to heaven. Basically,
Find
is
my
what it
way into
was.
heaven.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Buy yourself out of wars, by
Oh,
yourself
and when I
into
say
heaven.
money too, it wasn't just like gold or whatever. It was like, oh, you have to give the Pope your land. And how much land am I talking? I'm talking like a whole county.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that's literally what was going on back in the day, was
Mhm.
our forefathers were giving away all of our birthright to this corrupt priesthood.
Yep.
So this is just like the corruptiveness and everything that's bad about it today. People like to pretend like, oh, it was good back in the day, and oh, it's just corrupted, or they don't read the Bible or anything like that. What I try to point out is it has always been like this, and this is how it has gotten so bad, is that nobody wants to address this issue because everyone kind of like tolerates it, and they're like, oh, I don't want to argue religion, is basically how everyone feels about it, because it like disgusts people. They hate it.
I think what really gets my goat is people, certain politicians or certain commentators saying we need to get God back into America. That's what's wrong with it, and with everybody needs to get the Bible back into their lives. And I'm like, that's kind of the reason we're here. Is
Yeah.
that is
'Cause it-
why this is such a mess? Is because all you
Mhm.
people think that's the answer. If only you did these things, we'd all be perfect like me. And that's why we're here.
Yeah. Look, my view is that Christianity is like a synthetic religion. That's what happens.
Yeah.
It creates like a sanitized people who are unable to
Think for
like
themselves.
they go like through like spiritual phases basically, where they just become like spiritually dead, and we're just like at the end of one of those cycles basically,
Mm.
where they become nihilistic because of Christianity.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that's so interesting is, so I saw this many times when he was still doing like the CQ spaces, where like these Christians would come in and they would be so confused and perplexed at the idea that there could even be something different. And like, this is something I think you and I have experienced like many times when we're talking about this stuff with Christians, which is why we tell Christians to like keep it to themselves when we're in the chat, because it's like they're not all Christians, but like there's some that they can't conceptualize anything different. They think, and if you try to convince them like this isn't based on truth, this is based on myth, they're kind of like, well, what do you replace it with then? As though you need something to replace it with to acknowledge that the initial thing was like not correct. And it's also just like, one of the things that that I think they started to kind of notice with the CQ spaces that was really interesting is, and Jennifer, you'll appreciate this. So what happened with the CQ spaces is Amalek and his friends were basically trying to convince Christians to leave Christianity because it was fake and gay and all that stuff. And so what would happen is Christians would come in to argue with them, but like the most entertaining spaces were on Friday and Saturday night at around 1 or 2 a.m. because they had just gotten back from the bar, and they would come in and argue drunk. And this was so consistent. It
Oh
was
my God.
incredibly consistent. And it's kind of like none of them are like, they're not even happy when they're talking about their ideas or their beliefs. And it's just really striking when it was presented in that way.
I think
Yeah.
that's interesting.
I think what it is it's kind of like what you're talking about earlier, where it sets them up to have this conceptualization where they just have to ask for forgiveness and they get forgiven. And that kind of enables like bad behavior, right? And it makes perfect sense too, right? If you're a smart, intelligent person, you understand how if you have that kind of idea, well, what's the subconsciously, you can just be like, okay, anything I do, I just have to ask for forgiveness, and then you can kind of like do the worst thing. So it enables like bad behavior.
Well, and how many times do I forgive my brother? It's a 10 times 10 or 10 times. No, it's 1,000 times 1,000. It's like you constantly forgive your brother, which means basically anybody can walk all over anybody else, and you just have to put up with it. I mean, and
Yeah.
then the other thing that gets me a little irritated is when I hear certain people say, and I have someone in particular coming to mind, but I'm not going to say their name because I'm not interested in drawing that kind of attention. But that they say, like, you can't have morality without God. And I've heard this from a few, especially obviously on the right. You can't have morality without God, and that's why we're such a moralist or amoral country, is because we don't have enough God. And I'm like, hang on, why do you need a deity to tell you how to be a good person? Like, if you don't have your little rule book, I mean, honestly, if you're a good person, to me, that's going to shine through in your actions naturally. I'm a pagan, I'm an omniist, I'm a practicing witch, and I've had a lot of Christians say, if people only knew that you were a pagan and pagans were this nice and this good, they wouldn't be so scared of them. And I'm like, then get your head out of your Bible and go meet people. It's not about God didn't tell me to do this. Well, how are you so good and so nice? Well, God isn't telling you what to do. It's like, man, pick one. I got all kinds of gods I can go follow if I want to. Basically, I'm a nice person and I act nice because that's how I would like to be treated as well. And if you don't, go fuck yourself. So, I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just think I kind of agree. I just think from my perspective, I'm not like a pagan or anything. I just think that morality flows from your biology. So in the same way, like a sheepdog knows how to behave when it's born, that's how humans are. And I believe that we just know, like, from the way you're brought up, and instinctually when things are like, people know when things are right and wrong, and the gray areas, like the things in between. Rational societies have been debating them and changing them and evolving them throughout time forever. And when Christians say that, like, that's relative morality. Well, listen up. Your Bible is also relative morality. Okay. It's just that your relative morality was written just by Jews. Okay. So you're just anchoring yourself and anchoring your argument to that thing. You're saying, look, this Bible. Listen, it was just written by a bunch of Jews and back in time. So anybody can just write a book then. Okay. So shut up. No Jews ever spoke to God, okay? And you can't just base all morality off of, Jews said so in a book, okay? Like,
Well, and
that's
not just
not
one
actually
kind
an
of
argument.
Jews, like several different tribes and sects over history wrote different parts of the
Yeah.
Bible. So you're getting different perspectives that are horribly inconsistent. I mean, and even our friend here that we're watching, he talks about that as well, which I respect him for. Karlyn, what is funny?
No, I just thought the way you put that was
Oh, I thought you saw something on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, they're basically believing a propaganda story from the Iron Age. You understand how insane this is? We're talking
When
about
you put it like that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally Iron Age propaganda. They basically are saying that we would have no way of determining what is right or wrong without Iron Age morality, as if we couldn't just like take 10,000 people, drop them in the middle of Antarctica with like brain wipe them with no culture, and they wouldn't know it's wrong to like kill your children or rape or anything like that. That's retarded. If you think that, you're a fucked up person. Like, that's what it tells me.
The lightning on the tablet told us. The burning bush told us.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Iron Age people operated, dude. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And like, they have totally if you read the primary sources from back then, like, humans were so different. Like, we have evolved in ways, our brain chemistry, if we were to be able to have measured it with today's tools for 2,000 years consistently, I bet you it would blow our minds how differently people think. Like back in the ancient world, just one example I can think of is they were obsessed with spit. Every ritual is spit this, spit that. They're just obsessed with spit, like, in a way that it would, like, there's not even a parallel for it in today's society that I could even explain it to you. Like, there's like spit merchants and spit this and spit that. It's mentioned like thousands and thousands and thousands of times in some of these texts. They were obsessed with it, but you don't see that at all today, right? So that's just like, so imagine that, like, anyone who did that today, that would be weird, right? Well, that became weird because of a very slow societal change and brain way that became weird over time. That's how like morality evolves out of people.
Wasn't there I may be conflating some things here, but wasn't there I don't know if it was a society or a priesthood or something that took care of the humors of their king or their pharaoh. I'm not pinning it down, but one of them was in charge of the urine, one was in charge of the sweat, one was in charge of the poop, one was in charge of the tears, one was in charge of the spit. The five humors of the king or the god king were tended to and taken care of and dealt with very special priests.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Yeah. And like what's funny about that is basically like Christianity plunged Europe into a dark age, and they kind of enforced that type of thinking on the medical field.
Oh,
where
don't even get me started. Do not.
They like no medical textbooks were written or produced for nearly 1,000 years, and they are still running on the old like humors.
Blood and everything is about bleeding and
bleeding things and leech thing. All this
all
other
the ancient cures we are rediscovering now have been around for thousands of years, and now we have to rediscover them.
Yeah.
And if we had just not killed all the midwives and all the wizened women, maybe we would be a lot more advanced.
Yeah, basically like Christianity kind of like scientifically destroyed us in a lot of ways, and then it
talk about a dark age. Yeah.
It claims like what came after or whatever. It's ridiculous.
I agree. Okay, we can hang.
All right. I gotta pee, so I'm gonna let this play and I'll be right back, but I'll be back before it ends. It only says 3 minutes left, so if you guys have something to say, just hang on to it, okay?
Okay.
Be the clearest reading. Yes, the pronomial suffix issue is real, no doubt, but this is also 8th century BCE Hebrew, with much of the classical Hebrew that we rely on by comparison being a good bit later. Maybe we just need a different understanding of how Hebrew grammar worked at this linguistic time period. And both inscriptions use the same language, which may indicate that it was a kind of ritual or stereotype use to begin with. I suppose I just honestly wonder if there weren't some kind of theological a priori dedication to monotheism, would there be any debate here at all? I just don't think so. Interestingly enough, with all this debate on Asherah and Yahweh, what's ironically clear is that Asherah is both earlier and better attested epigraphically than Yahweh. By the time Yahweh entered history on the Misha Stele, Asherah had already been attested for some 800 years. Thus, for much of history, Yahweh was just a footnote in Asherah's history and not the other way around. And thus, Israelite history may have a history of erasing and forgetting Asherah, the divine queen mother, as much as it has centering and worshiping Yahweh. But the repressed always has a way of returning. The Sefer Zohar, the most important expression of the Kabbalah, has an absolutely startling passage at 149a, wherein it argues that the prohibition on worshiping Asherah was only to prevent a kind of one-sided appreciation of the divine. Rather, Asherah is simply the female aspect of Asher, the sphirot of potency, Yesod. Thus, Baal, literally husband, and Asherah are the divine husband and wife after all. Yeah, shockingly, the Zohar is actually arguing that Asherah is in fact the female divine presence known as the Shekhinah, and thus to worship the divine in the divine fullness, both the masculine and the feminine must be joined together into a divine totality. And Asherah, once belittled and mocked through misgendering and erased from Israelite history, is returning from her theological exile at the very heart of Jewish mysticism. Asherah has thus come home. The literature on Asherah is extensive, but I'll include a reading list that informed this episode in the description. And of course, we're not yet at all done with Yahweh. The apocalyptic Yahweh at least remains on the horizon, so we're going to return to this God very soon. Until then, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank you for watching Esoterica.
All right, that is the end of our first video.
We're gonna be here all night.
We're not gonna be here all night. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. We can always stop. We can always stop and restart next week. It's not a big deal.
Right.
All right. So that Jennifer wanted to watch that video to set up this video that we're gonna watch, which is Introduction to Kabbalah and
yeah,
Jewish.
Let's do it. Yeah, definitely. Let's do that.
You're cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Emma,
I'm chilling. I'm chilling. I'm watching. I'm chilling. My dog is just driving me nuts. And go ahead.
First, can I just say welcome, Amalek, to Disenraged. You are our second guest we've ever had.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah. And this has been really fun. I don't know if have you ever watched any of our shows before?
Yeah, I have. I like tune in and then I tune out.
Yeah. Amalek is second after the Bigfoot lady. So
yeah, my friend Sherry. Yeah.
Which was a great episode.
That was
Anyway.
so fun.
It's loud.
I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. One of the most difficult aspects in starting to study Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah is getting a handle on just how those ideas developed over time. It's tempting to think that, for instance, Kabbalah has just always existed in the form that we have it, or that Kabbalah is just one thing at all. Of course, neither of these positions is really tenable. Such notions developed greatly through the ages and are still developing. And there are now, and there have always been, numerous mutually exclusive schools of Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. This class is meant to serve as an introduction to Jewish mysticism and
Yay, I
Kabbalah
made another coaster.
from the point of
Woohoo!
view of
It's good,
its
Jennifer.
incredibly complex development from the prophets of ancient Israel unto the rise of modern Hasidism in the 18th century. Of course, this series isn't meant to be exhaustive by any means, but only should serve as a springboard for deeper study and reflection, and hopefully it will also enable you to situate developments in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah in their historical
answer a
and
question in the
cultural
chat.
context, and hopefully embolden you
shit.
to dive into the primary
Hang on, sorry, I got
texts,
too many
which
windows
are
open. Okay, what question want to answer in the chat? The Wicca question?
Yeah, I'm just reiterating I'm not Wiccan, but I have not heard of the divine rebus unless there is another name for it. I have not heard, so that might just be something in alchemy.
Cool.
are admittedly as sublime as they are obscure. Let me express my gratitude to Congregation Techia for allowing me to use these lectures to reach a larger audience here on Esoterica. If you want, you can find the entire series under the playlist Entering the Garden, an Introduction to Jewish Mysticism and Kabbalah. I'll be uploading them over the next few weeks, or if you find these episodes after autumn of 2021 and you want to watch the entire series, you can find them in that playlist. If you find this series on Kabbalah interesting, I'd hope you check out my other content on topics in esotericism and perhaps consider supporting the production of free academic and scholarly topics in occultism, hermetic philosophy by joining my Patreon.
All right, I'm not going to, no
Weird
commercial.
Jewish mysticism.
Okay.
This is some of the weirdest stuff. I mean, it's sort of like ancient science fiction. And so I really appreciate folks taking the time to join me.
Oh, that's
as we
hilarious. He
begin
said
to
that.
explore
That's
some
so funny.
of this.
I didn't remember that he
past,
said
and I
that as
think
a
really,
reference. That's so funny.
You did.
Yeah.
really amazing and beautiful and very controversial literature. So that said, and again, also just like really stoked that some of the really awesome people, I mean, it's like scholars like Ashley Bohr. It's really, thank you so much. Ashley is an amazing scholar of Marxism and who I really
Marxism?
admire a lot.
What the fuck?
So having
Did we just find the Jewish communist? We're listening to a
Yeah,
Jewish
they do.
communist.
Yeah, they are like, yeah, they are. He's with them. He's like, yeah, he is like that. I don't remember. There was a whole political drama, and I don't remember all the drama behind it. But it was basically that he is like a leftist or whatever, I believe, is going on. I don't remember.
Can't escape it. It's everywhere.
It's so funny. Yeah, not surprising either. I
Yeah,
think you'll see a lot of similarities. If you don't know, you'll. I can give some of this stuff to you later, but a lot of what I would say, like a lot of the memery behind communism came out of Kabbalistic teachings and understandings of Kabbalah. Like it wasn't that's not like a weird thing. Like there's like a scholarship behind this that explains that. So you'll see a lot of the same themes from your stuff that you do in this.
We should do a show on that sometime. That would be interesting.
We're gonna study Marxism so much we're gonna start agreeing with it.
No.
Kidding.
Folks in the room that are so smart and just willing to take the time to listen to me, I guess. I'm just really humbled by that. So thank you all for coming along with me on this journey, entering the garden. As I mentioned in the email, the term garden here is from pardes, right, which is this big word in Jewish mysticism that often mystics are described as going down into a garden. In Jewish mysticism, we don't typically go up, which is a little unusual, right? We typically think of mysticism as going up towards God or whatever that is up there. But typically in Jewish mysticism, we go down. We descend into things. And so the sort of lobby of the world of the mystical is this pardes, this garden. And what's really amazing is that we all get to enter this garden together. And I will say that in traditional Jewish lore, especially found in the Talmud and through the Middle Ages, this is considered to be a relatively dangerous journey. In the very famous story, as you may know, in the Babylonian Talmud in Tractate Chagiga, 4 people went down into the garden and only one came out alive, basically, right? So one became a heretic, one became insane, one died, and only one, Rabbi Akiva, emerged. And so we'll talk about that really famous story here in just a couple of weeks. So Jewish mysticism is, on the one hand, I think, an incredibly intriguing domain of study, but it also has always had an undercurrent of danger. And we'll see some of that undercurrent of danger as we get into it as well. So what kind of class is this going to be? How are we going to approach this material? Well, I wear my methodology on my sleeve. I am a historical materialist. So when I approach this material, I try to approach it from a historically minded material understanding of history. And what that means is that I try to locate the historical ideas and persons and other kinds of concepts in the environment in which they emerged. And I don't try to do sort of general mystical ideas about what this stuff might mean. You have to do that on your own time because I don't have the mental capacity to tell you what half this stuff means. I can tell you what got written down, by whom and why, and maybe something about the world in which it got produced. But what it might mean for your spirituality, for instance, is something that might just be, frankly, not completely beyond me. But what we'll be looking at through the course of this class is a kind of guided tour of the major concepts, the major texts, the major history and personalities that go into Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. One of the things I really hope that you get out of this class as we work through it is, for me, Kabbalah has always been incredibly intimidating. The books of the Kabbalah are very intimidating. And part of what I hope to do is give you confidence and give you enough context that if you wanted to dive deeper into Kabbalistic books, you could do that, right? So you could pick up a copy of the Zohar or the Sefer Yetzirah or other major historical Jewish mystical texts, and that you could feel confident that you could dive into them. Now, sink or swim, that's probably up to you, but you can at least feel the confidence to make the dive. So what I'm not going to do, and what my aim isn't in this class, is I can't make you a Kabbalist, right? I'm not a Kabbalist. I don't identify as a Kabbalist. And so I can't make you a Kabbalist. I think it takes a Kabbalist to make a Kabbalist. I think it works like that. Like it takes a rabbi to make a rabbi. I think it takes a Kabbalist to make a Kabbalist. And I ain't no rabbi and I ain't no Kabbalist. So I don't have the ability to make you a Kabbalist. Now, that's not to say that some of these ideas might very well prove to be incredibly positive in your spiritual life and your spiritual development. And if that's the case, that's fantastic. But I don't want anyone to have the idea that what I'm going to be teaching is how to do Jewish mysticism, because I don't know how to do Jewish mysticism. Or if I did, I would be doing that in a different class maybe. So we're going to be studying it again from a historical academic perspective, as opposed from studying it as trying to be mystics. So we're not going to be doing much in the way of meditating on Hebrew letters to measure the body of God, which was a thing in Jewish mysticism. We'll talk about it. Yeah, they measured the body of God. God has really long fingers. which are really creepy. So we'll get to that this kind of mysticism later.
Why?
So what do I mean by
Wow.
mysticism? This is a word that is really difficult to pin down. It's one of these words like religion or magic, where scholars and academics have no real consensus about what this word means. So I'm just going to throw out a really stipulative definition of what I'm going to mean by mystical in this class. And you're certainly going to hear the fact that I come from a philosophical background. And so coming from a philosophical background, I think about mysticism largely in a philosophic lens. And what I mean by mystical is a non-rational mode in which one experiences or learns about fundamental reality, right? So, and in addition to that, right, it's also the traditions that accrue, right, because of those kinds of experiences. Now, and by the way, the word tradition there, right, I'm kind of punning on it in Hebrew, right? The word Kabbalah actually means received, and it has a sense of tradition, right? So I'm kind of punning a little bit on what this word mysticism. When I say non-rational, what I want you to hear is not irrational, right? It's not like mystics can just say whatever they want. They can't do that. They're inside of traditions, they're inside of cultural contexts, they're inside of religious settings. And so what they say, as daring as it might be, is always situated and only makes sense within a specific context. So it's not just irrational. They're not just saying random crazy things. All right, sometimes mystics are thought as being somehow crazy or something like that, and that's not the case. In fact, many mystics in many traditions are incredibly systematic in how they go about doing their mysticism. Think of Hildegard of Bingen, the great German Christian mystic. But when I say non-rational, what I do mean here is that they're not going to be giving us
two things real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Two things. First of all, if you're a Christian, you're listening to this, I want you to know something, that Paul claimed to be from the school that of Judaism that we today now know as like proto-Kabbalistic, basically. That Paul, the creator of Christianity, or the not creator of Christianity, but the one that brought it into Rome. And okay, look, the guys
One
that you
of the
guys know,
founders.
Paul. Yeah, the founder of how we know Christianity today. Before it was like the Way, and it was a Jewish sect of Messianic Judaism, basically. And then Paul transforms it to the Gentiles. He was a Kabbalist Jew in this same school. He'll go over it at some point, I believe.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is part of like the issue, like basically people like have this totally misconstrued understanding of like what this Kabbalah stuff is, and they basically, like he said it earlier, it's very complex and it's very dense. So what a lot of people do is they just completely ignore it, and they treat it, like a lot of Christians specifically, like I would say Christian anti-Semites specifically, they treat it like it's spooky books, like we can't read it. Kind of like they treat Harry Potter and all this other stuff. They're like scared to even like learn about it. When myself, on the other hand, I studied the shit out of this to understand it, because all of the stuff that he's going to go over, every single bit of it, is directly related to the end time stuff. You cannot understand like the end times narrative that they're all obsessed with, and they're all trying to like make come about, without understanding this Kabbalah stuff. Basically, like this Kabbalah stuff is the oral tradition, esoteric understanding that was like layered between the generations of rabbis and Jews throughout the Middle Ages, all the way to the point that we're at today. So from the Second Temple destruction, okay, all the way through all the Middle Ages, the end of the Roman Empire, through the Middle Ages, through all of the Renaissance, through the Age of Discovery, all this stuff, to today, this is how they kept their esoteric knowledge, was through this stuff. And that shit is how they like plan out and how they do this like end times narrative scripting stuff. That's how I mean, I think everyone knows what I'm talking about as far as like you see this like the evangelical Christians are obsessed with the end times. The Muslims are obsessed with the end times.
My church was a huge doomsday cult freaking thing. Yeah.
It all evolved out of apocalyptic Judaism, is what I would call it, and part of apocalyptic Judaism is understanding the Kabbalah.
Is this also how they kind of low key go, my stuff's more important and more holier than your stuff because I have all the sacred knowledge?
Well, what this is interesting because they do have all the sacred knowledge, because basically what they did is they acted as like intermediaries to God for 2,000 years. Basically,
Yeah. Okay.
every court in Europe basically had like a court Jew, essentially is what I would describe it as.
No
And they had,
kidding.
yeah, and they had like,
You?
oh yeah, this is who the Jews were. Is basically like each court basically had court Jews that would like look. This is how they thought of them. They thought of them as like people from the book. So it's like, oh yes, they were smart people that dealt with like these like esoteric understandings, and essentially like they became like a what I would call like an ethnic mafia spread throughout Europe. Like that's how I would describe them. It was like an ethnic mafia who said that they spoke to God, who spread throughout Europe. Like in my view, Christianity paved the way for international Jewry, like through this system. And like that's how like we're just living 2,000 years after that system, that survival strategy that they have, which is just based on the Bible. It's like that survival strategy playing out. And like I know this is a little complex, but I would say like the TLDR on that survival strategy is just the Jacob versus Esau dialectic, where they make their enemies believe that they are Esau, and they make their enemies like behave in Esau-like fashion, and then they become the Jacob, and they take the birthright, and they just like play this dialectic out over and over and over and over again. And you see it in like our stories and our myths and how we've become Christianized. It makes it really obvious if you understand how that story plays out, and that's basically what they've been doing for a very long time. And the Kabbalah references this stuff over and over and over again, and it references like the end time stuff.
The more I hear you talk about this, like the angrier I get at this whole thing. Which is why I'm not really saying much, because I'm just sitting over here saying things in my head that I shouldn't say on YouTube.
Well, the thing is like my view of this is like most people through most of time could not have possibly read all the stuff that we've read and that we have access to. We basically have like more access to more knowledge than ever before, and we're able to like efficiently get through it and read through it at a rate that's like never been done before. It would take someone decades to basically read as much as we possibly could right now and understand these things and like watch classes on this stuff, right? So it's very difficult for people to put all these pieces together, and that complexity, just like Dr. Sled just explained, that complexity leads people to just be like ignorant about it, right? So they just, I mean, a lot of Christian anti-Semites will just be like, oh, Kabbalah's evil, Jewish, I'll never studying it. Well, now these guys just don't understand the end time stories. They don't actually understand how it operates.
And that was actually like one of the most convincing arguments I ever heard made in like the CQ spaces, because it was like, how do you trick an entire population into believing like this religion? I mean, because it just like it expanded so quickly. Like, how the fuck do you do that? And it's like, well, they couldn't read, and you were building these big houses to bring them into that had all these beautiful colors, and you were playing music, and it was all very magical, and you had someone else always reading the books for them because they couldn't read. And it's like, even when they started to learn how to read, there are so many of these books, and like literally no one wants to sit down and read all of them because they're boring and it takes forever. And then you like, in order to do like the type of analysis we can do today with AI, you would have to just go through with a fine-tooth comb over everything. It would take you your entire lifetime to do this type of analysis. And today we can just like drop all this stuff into AI and have it answer any question within like minutes or seconds or whatever.
But also they rule through fear. They already told them what to think about what they were reading once they were able to read it. They already told how to interpret it. And this is how you're going to be afraid, so that you get in line and you do what we tell you to do. And that way you'll go to heaven and it'll all be okay.
Well, just understand that like a lot of this stuff, basically, these are like the esoteric stories they tell each other on how to perform their survival strategy. So you'll see it. They'll when he goes over the golem, just understand what that is in our modern politics, what that actually is. We see golems everywhere. Donald Trump is a golem. Okay. And this is how they saw these things. When he says that these are philosophical concepts, he understands them as philosophical concepts, and that is true. But I want you to understand them as political concepts. That's what these really were. And they had so much power. I'm telling you, I could literally spend the rest of my life just explaining to you stories after stories of like medieval Europe and the Renaissance times and during the Revolutionary War times. Like they're always involved in this way, doing these things. And like, so when everyone's like blaming Jews, it's not just, no, it's Christians thinking, it's like they're buying into this stuff. They're like,
So when people say Kabbalah is the tree of life and it is a pathway to enlightenment, that is the fluffy bunny, not real actual version of it. Is that what I'm understanding?
well, I think it's a lens to view, like, okay, a good example of this is like, okay, are you familiar with like the link between like Freemasonry and Kabbalah, right? Like they're very interested in like Kabbalah in the Freemasons, and essentially what's going on there is like they literally want to become like they're like a Solomon temple cult, and he'll go over Solomon and Matt, like the demonology and all this other stuff, right? And so what they are is they're like European weebs, but instead of being weebs for like Japan, they're weebs for like Jewish magic. So they're like really into these Jewish philosophical magical concepts. And what were those developed as? Well, those were developed as literally like theological conquest tools, right? So they prophecy deceptions, how to make their people who rule over their people with fear, right? All these different concepts. So it's basically like them teaching the Gentiles how to do that stuff.
Okay, while maintaining though we were the first origins people that can tell you how to do it, and so you can never get rid of us.
Well, that's what their religion is too. Their religion says that. It says in the Bible that you will become the priests to the nations.
Oh God, yes, yeah, that's true.
It says that you will be a cat. They basically, when the Messiah comes, that they will be set as a caste above everybody else.
Yeah.
And that God will speak to them, and then that they will speak to the people, them as a race, as a group. That's
so elitist. I can't even.
Well, it's coming. It's going to be the messianic techno age, and it's just coming. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
This is why I'm moving to the country.
It's over.
Yeah,
It's over. It's all over.
moving to the
It's not
country and
going to
eat a
tell
lot of
you.
pizzas.
A,
Yeah.
then B, then C. Therefore, you should deduce D. And they're not going to be saying something like, I did an experiment, and from my experiment, my induction is a 75% certainty that blah, 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 blah. They're not doing any of that. They're having visions, they're having experiences, and they're reporting back on the content of those experiences or the way that those experiences have transformed them personally. So when I say non-rational, I want you to hear neither irrational nor rational, non-rational, something in between, something in between. I should also say just a little bit out of the gate about the distinction here to be made between Jewish mysticism more generally and Kabbalah more specifically. We now, in the sort of sloppy vernacular that we use the term Kabbalah to describe all of Jewish mysticism. It's a bit of a mistake.
This is such an important point.
Kabbalah, right, is a very specific kind of Jewish mysticism that began to emerge in the 13th century. Now, 13th century of the Common Era, mostly in southern France and Spain. So
Catalonia
we're going to get to the
specifically.
Kabbalah, and obviously we're going to spend a lot of time on Kabbalah, but we got to get there. And the Kabbalah,
a lot of
hold on.
Do you ever cover
didn't
Spanish
just
Civil War?
emerge out of
Do you do
nothing.
Spanish Civil War stuff here?
No.
No.
Well, explain.
We usually try to stay out of
Wow,
politics.
you should, Karlyn. You gotta look at
You want me
Spanish
to?
Civil War.
I'll clear my fucking schedule and look
Hold
into the Spanish Civil War.
You-
Okay.
Listen. It was
I
a
think we have
civil
an
war
alien
where
dick
it was
episode
literally.
we need to do.
Hold on, it was literally an Antifa versus fascist civil war, and there's unlimited material
No
for you to cover.
No way.
I can't believe you don't know about this. Unlimited material you have there.
You can't believe I don't know about the Spanish Civil War. I didn't even know about all the World War II stuff until
Listen.
2 years ago.
It happened in 1936, and Hitler basically supported the nationalists, and it's a whole thing. It doesn't matter. All I'm telling you is that it literally there was a Catalonian Antifa that rose up, and they were using like I mean, if you look at like a lot of them were in like Kabbalistic secret societies.
No shit.
Very old ones, yeah, very very old. Like, and he's right. So it was from like like Barcelona, so Catalonia, northeast Spain to basically, and southern France, right? Like that whole region. Avignon was a seat of the Papal State for a long time, and it had a whole city of them right outside of it, and they were all like Kabbalistic. That's where Nostradamus was. Like a lot of his predictions came from that same area where they're basically there's this whole region of Europe where they're doing this. Basically, oh, I had a vision and this is what's gonna happen and blah blah blah. Like that's what's going on here.
Isn't that where also that the Church of the oh god, now I can't think of what it is, where they it's like the sake it's not Sacre Coeur, it's like the heart of the flaming heart or something. It's like this ancient temple. It has all these Masonic and like all the symbols and the spirals and pillars inside. I'm doing a terrible job of describing this, but
The
it's like
sepulcher,
the
right?
Mary, it's like the Mary Cathedral or something. God damn, what my poor brain. I'm so sorry. I wish I could be a little more articulate about it. I could see it in my head, but the Templars were real big into it, and oh God, I can't think of it. But it's in France, and I think they showed it in one of those freaking stupid movies about trying to find out about the blood of Christ, and that this is where they kept the actual Grail and shit. But it's got all the symbols, and it's all the interesting ascension tools and crap are supposed to be built into this church there.
Yeah, that's what they do a lot of or that's where they have a lot of what I would say like Jesus fan fiction going on for the same reason.
Nice.
Like Dan Brown stuff and stuff like that.
That's the one. That's Dan Brown, because they showed it at the end. It was Sacred Heart. That's what it is. The Cathedral of the Sacred Heart of the Sacred Blood.
I can't believe
Sacre-Sen.
Karlyn, you gotta look into the Spanish Civil War.
Okay, I'll look into the fucking Spanish.
This would be like if you told if I told you that I didn't know anything about the World War II. Like that's your war. That's what you gotta,
but I study communism today. I don't study.
Hold on. All these like autistic sing-song alongs that they all have are from this. I'm telling you, it's gonna blow your mind. You're gonna be like, that's where this is from. That the concept of zines, I assure you, was being used in the Spanish Civil War. This rabbit hole, like you should literally just go on YouTube and react to like Spanish Civil War like documentaries. You'll love it. It was literally like it was a civil war between different versions of communists fighting over. They were like arguing over like, are we anarcho-syndicalists or are we like all these autistic things that you understand? And they're arguing with each other in literature while a real war is going on.
See, I feel like this is just going to make me more depressed because I'm going to be like, oh, this has really happened just all throughout time. And this is just another manifestation of exactly the same thing that humanity has always done before. And there's nothing that can be done about it. And I'm going to go to the gulag.
Well, you'll see that the blueprint for how the revolution happened there, they enacted it there in Spain. You'll see it. You'll see like what they're
turning. So it makes sense, right?
What they're trying to do today, like they basically are looking at Spain as a blueprint. They're looking at Russia as a blueprint, right? Like this sort of the workers' revolution shit. I'm telling you, you'll find it interesting for sure. And they got their asses kicked too, which is kind of funny.
Like Karlyn needs another rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, like I need another thing to do. Okay, I promise we will do something on the Spanish Civil War. And if like you have any video suggestions, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
All right, cool.
And so many of the complex ideas that you may have heard of in Kabbalah, like Tikkun Olam, which is a Kabbalistic idea.
That's what I talk about, yeah.
World, or the idea of Tzimtzum, the contraction into which God sort of shrinks God's self to project the universe or the cosmos. Those ideas don't come out.
Hang on, I don't know what this means.
Rosicrucian, that might have been it. Magni, I don't know. I think it was a Rosicrucian church, but it wasn't called that. I'm gonna look now. But thank you. That is exactly what it was. I appreciate that.
You let us know if you find that, Jennifer.
I'm doing my best here.
Of whole cloth, and we're gonna have to do a little bit of work to get there, but get there we will. So think about Kabbalah as a specific type of Jewish mysticism, and there are other Jewish mysticisms that also existed prior to the Kabbalah, right? So there are other forms of Jewish mysticism that existed prior.
Like Christianity.
Many of those prior forms of mysticism were absorbed into Kabbalah. So this is part of the reason why it gets a bit confusing. So suffice to say, Israelite or Jewish mysticism extends probably back before history. What I mean by history, of course, here is just the history of writing, when the ancient Israelites began to write things down. And as we'll see in a moment, some of the earliest texts that have been recovered in Israelite literature are, interestingly enough, both composed by women and also both composed by mystic women.
Women, always the problem since the beginning.
But I think this is a weird thing that, for whatever reason, doesn't get enough press.
No, he's
some
talking
of the
about that they
earliest
had
Israelite
mystic women.
literature is by
Okay.
women mystics.
Not that they were wrong.
So why that doesn't get enough press is
Well,
misogyny. But right,
it's misogyny. It's fucking
I'm
fuck
curious what you're seeing on the
you.
screen here on the left-hand side.
Yep.
This is an image of an amulet
the
recovered
patriarchy.
from a
How funny
a
is it how these
burial
guys,
site in
like I said, these
Jerusalem
guys would be
called the-
rolled. They'd be so upset they know that I use how I use their work. They really don't like it.
This
I
is
mean,
why you got blocked.
Jonathan Adler has me blocked. Like all these academics have me
No way.
blocked.
He's got you blocked. That's so
I've
funny.
I never interact with them because I have respect for their work, and I know like if I start tagging them in my tweets, like they're gonna see my, you know what I mean? Like I don't do that, right? So it is what it is. Like I understand, and so I don't do that. So then when they block me anyway, it's funny because that means I know that they searched their name, saw that I was posting about them using their work the way I use it, where I point the fact that it's Jewish and it's being used to take over the world. And they hate that and they immediately block me. It's very funny.
It's very, very Jewish behavior.
But it's
I
very
found-
just true, by the way. I'll show you guys. Look, the Tikkun Olam thing. This is amazing. This is great, by the way, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. When I explain to people that are like schizo Christian anti-Semites that they don't understand, like you have to study this stuff to understand what the strategy is. Tikkun Olam, to repair the world, to heal the world. They're trying to make the world into like a oneness, basically, right? Which is like the eternal concept of like pushing the world towards like globo homo, towards like one shopping mall type of world, like towards a concept where there is all just one world worshiping Yahweh. Does that make sense?
Why do you
Mhm.
need so many kinds of soap? That's sorry, it just made me think of that.
Yeah.
It's called the Rosalind Chapel, except for it's in Midlothian, Scotland. And I thought it was in France, so I could be thinking of a different one, but that's the one in the Dan Brown books, and that's the one I thought. I'm sure there's more than one, but it's a Rosicrucian church. Anyway, I'm done. Yeah, you only need one soap and one kind of hamburger and one kind of everything, and you will eat bugs and own nothing and be happy.
Ketef Hinnom. And what you're looking at is the earliest recovered archaeological section of the Hebrew Bible. So if you've ever wondered what the earliest text of the Hebrew Bible looks like, it's this. These are tiny little silver amulets that were recovered from a tomb. And for the folks here that read a little bit of Hebrew, you probably can see that this is a version of the priestly benediction. So the earliest fraction, the earliest text we have of the Torah is actually an amulet, a magical device put into a tomb, very likely to protect the
A
dead,
magical device.
perhaps from
Okay.
malevolent supernatural
That's
forces.
what amulets
So
are,
in many
right?
ways, we might even say that the first appearance of the Torah in history is a supernatural.
No, I'm more just like I'm more just incredulous over the fact that the origin of this religion that has taken over everything is like a fucking magical amulet that they found in a tomb.
Well, no, this is the first example of what went into
No,
the Torah.
well, still though, if like just like like extrapolate this out to today, and we find a tomb of someone really important and sacred, and there is an amulet in that tomb, and we pick it out, and it's got some scripture on it or something, and we say, okay, the magical amulet in the tomb is the basis of our entire belief system that the world is going to run on.
Yeah,
Like,
that's God now. That's God. That's God now. If you
Yeah.
don't think that that's God, you're stupid. Where are you going to get morals from? That's God now.
I was
it's
thinking of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the where they keep finding things going, you see, we were right. We had it all along. Yeah. And when probably it was an oral tradition and some asshole wrote it down on a little silver piece. And now it's the first thing that they touch when they walk into their houses now.
Yeah, someone's gonna go dig up a grave of some like grandfather or something. He's gonna have some magical amulet with all his grandkids like in scrawlers, like some lady that's gonna have like an amulet with her grandkids' names on it or something, and they're gonna go, here, this is the ruling family of Earth because it's a magical fucking amulet. It's like, what the fuck, bro?
It reminds me of he's like anybody who reads Hebrew, and I'm like, I immediately thought of yogurt from the freaking movie,
Yeah.
and he's all.
Spaceballs.
These Spaceballs, and he's like,
We are living in Spaceballs. Yeah. No, but we're living in Spaceballs, but like for real, we're living in
For real.
Spaceballs.
Yep.
Dude, Spaceballs is it's just like a classic Jewish. It's like Jewish writing is just like a genre of literature. It's like the last shall be first. It's like this eternal oneness to the Tikkun Olam. You guys will see it as he goes over it. It's very
The chosen one. The short. You have to come see movie night with us some night, Amalek.
Okay, yeah.
Amalek's not going to join the community and hang out. Big Tech's going to be so jealous. We stole you. It's fine.
Oh.
Mad.
Natural mystical appearance. It's an amulet. It's an amulet there to protect the dead, probably. If you've ever been to the Israel Museum, you may have seen this, and it's actually on both sides, and it's tiny. The little amulet's probably about that big, and the Hebrew letters here, as you can see, are not modern Hebrew letters. They are very old Paleo Hebrew letters. The earliest case in which we can talk about an Israelite form of mysticism has to do with two different concepts. One concept is theophany, which means God appearing. We'll talk about it more in just a moment. And the other, of course, I'm sure as many folks know, is prophecy, which is the case in which God, the Israelite God, Yahweh, is said to speak to people. And those people that Yahweh speaks to, in turn, speak on the behalf of Yahweh. And in fact, that's where the word prophecy comes from. The word prophet just means to speak for in ancient Greek. So core to ancient Israelite religion, like many ancient religions, was the idea that their God, their tribal God, Yahweh, spoke to people. It communicated to people. Now, typically, when gods speak to people, that is non-rational, right? That's non-rational. It's not rational, right? It's not like you can make a logical, deductive argument that God's speaking to you. And yet, prophets are often taken seriously and sometimes killed in history. But it's very clear from ancient Israelite society and the larger ancient Near East society that prophecy was a widely attested and important social vocation. So Yahweh talked to people, and those people said what Yahweh told them. And this is really important in two distinct ways. One way this is really important is that Yahweh does something very interesting with the ancient Israelites that we don't really see attested in many other ancient Near East cultures. And that is Yahweh establishes a vassal contract with the Israelite nation.
So here's what I was saying. This is the henotheism. They chose God and God chose them.
The vassal contract is where a lesser power agrees to be ruled over by a stronger power, basically for protection. This is, if you want to think about this in terms.
So it's like the mob.
He was just about to say that. Yeah.
Yes, and then they got everyone to see this idea, and basically like the Romans and everybody sees how they're doing this idea, and they're like, oh wait, you guys are just like theologically ruling your people through like mob tactics, like mafia tactics. We are gonna get in. Like they buy into that. They're like, oh, this is gonna work. They mix it with like Platonism. This is what Christianity is. It's basically like what I would call proto Kabbalah, right? Prophecy, mystical visions, and the concept of a Messiah all coming together in the apocalypse. And it's mixing that with Platonism, essentially, like what I would call middle and Neoplatonism. Alexander or Philo of Alexandria, I would say, is likely one of the culprits who kind of like mix the two concepts together of the Platonist ideas with what I would call, like at the time, Essene Judaism, essentially, that believed in this. It was kind of like wilderness Judaism. If you're familiar with John the Baptist archetype, it was kind of like that. He was most likely an Essene. The kind of Jews who would go out in the wild basically and have visions, and they would like basically starve themselves. They would fast and then contemplate the Torah or recite the Torah or write this book of the Torah word for word, exactly every word correctly, while you're fasting for 90 days, things like that. So there's jars upon jars of their writings essentially. And that's where we get a lot of the like apocalyptic ideas that Christianity later adopts. So Christianity is apocalyptic Judaism. In the same way, this Kabbalah is just like the later versions of it.
This is like this is just really making me feel like humanity in general is just set up to replay the same patterns like over and over and over and over and over again. And that's all that Earth is it's just we're replaying exactly the same patterns just for millennia and millennia until maybe we figure it out, or maybe we never figure it out, and never figuring it out is the point. I don't know.
No,
I'm
until we
questioning
overcome the
like,
need to dominate and control each other, it will never end.
These dudes are about to like take over the planet
yeah,
with this. Like 2/3 of the world is basically following a religion based on this amulet right here.
that's fucking crazy.
And they have nukes, and they think that the world is going to end in fire, and half of them thinks like the Antichrist is going to be on their side, and the other thinks that like the Jesus is going to be on our side, and the Jews think it's going to be their Messiah that's going to stop it all. Like they basically all are believing in this fake prophecy stuff.
Yep, our
Some
God's
version
better
of
than
it.
your God.
88% of Congress in America believes in this.
Oh, see, that scares me a little bit. Anyway, yeah, when you think about it, I don't want to go there. Okay, let's.
Go back. Okay.
Of like,
No,
you know,
yeah,
the
just kind
mafia.
of
It's like
move on.
paying protection money, right? The local mob boss comes
Mob.
down and says, you know, you could get hurt out here. You might want to pay us a little money. We'll protect you. Well, Yahweh comes along and says, it's dangerous out there, you Israelites. Maybe you should worship me alone and I'll protect you, right? And so in many ways, the Torah is actually structured a lot like a vassal contract. In fact, if you read ancient Near East vassal contracts written in the Akkadian language, it's very clear that the writer of the Torah, at least certain sections of the Torah, are emulating that contract language. They're diplomats. Diplomats had to be literate, and one of the things diplomats would have known, Israel was almost always a vassal state for the Egyptians or the Babylonians or the Assyrians. Vassal contracts would have been part of their life, and making a vassal contract with their God would have made a lot of sense. This is also revolutionary because you're making a vassal contract with a God and not another country, which means that you're subservient fundamentally to some other being and not the king of Babylon or whatever.
This is why violent
This
religious
doesn't go
people
well
really
for the
scare
ancient
me.
Israelites, but it does establish what we call the Deuteronomic theology. And this is just a complicated way of saying, if you have a contract, contracts are always involved you getting things out of the deal. Well, the Israelites vowed that they would serve only one God, Yahweh, and Yahweh vows that if they do that, they will get the land, right? They will have the land, and a land flowing with milk and honey and all the rest.
Land of Canaan.
Right? And the idea is they keep their side of the deal, the Israelites, then Yahweh will keep their side of the deal.
This is so important too. This is why,
now, if you know anything
this is
about
why
history,
Christians who
that
are
relationship-
like Christian anti-Zionists that say like, oh, Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism. It shows that they have never read the Bible. The entire purpose of the Bible, of the Hebrew Bible, is the story of the Hebrew Israelite Jewish people, their God, and that land right there.
Yep.
That's the entire thing. It's in the idea that they are that Israel has nothing to do with Zionism is so insane. The people who made the borders of Israel literally met and had Bible studies where they argued over where the borders of Israel should be based on biblical verses. So this whole like, oh, the secular state of Israel, blah, 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 that is bullshit. They might not have been practicing Jews, but they were literally reading from this text to determine, oh, well, our border should be here because God said so. Okay.
Yep. I think that's why the people that live there already were pretty pissed off about it.
Well, because God said so to them that it's theirs now too. So they're all just
Everybody's
mind
got-
fucked.
yeah, right.
They're all mind fucked. Yeah.
Yeah.
was rocky. Let's call it rocky. This didn't happen for lots of reasons. There are lots of things that broke down in that process. Further, right, in addition to this whole vassal contract business between Yahweh and the Israelites, it also seems like there was a tradition within the Israelites community where Yahweh spoke to individual people. Those people typically called Navi, right? Prophets, Naviim. These prophets would receive the message from Yahweh and then go communicate it to the broader Israelite community.
That's such a
It was
big
almost
trust
always
me,
negative.
bro.
Yeah.
The prophet, you
They
never invite a
can't
prophet
even-
to a party. They will ruin any party you invite them to because they'll mostly spend all their time condemning everything you have your whole life. So prophets are the joy kill of all times. So prophets, as we know from ancient Israelite and other ancient Near East literature, are widely attested. Prophet was a job, right? You could be an independent freelance prophet. You could be an institutional prophet. We'll talk more about prophecy in a minute.
I want to be a
What you're
prophet.
seeing on the screen here
Yep.
on the right-hand
Freelance
side
prophecy
is
right here.
actually a
Yeah.
divinatory
prophecy.
device. I don't know if you can recognize what organ that is, but that is a liver. That is a liver. And what you see here is the liver is divided into certain sections, and there is cuneiform script on that liver. This is from the old Babylonian period. And what you would do, if you wanted to figure out the will of the gods, is that you kill an animal, typically a sheep, and you would take out their liver, obviously, and you would inspect it. And what this is a Babylonian liver inspection guide. And so if there are blemishes or deformities or other kinds of markings on the liver, livers are typically very smooth organs. If you've ever seen a liver, they're typically very smooth, but they sometimes have all kinds of markings and things on them. And what happens is that you would locate the markings, and you can see here there's a guide in old Akkadian, and it would tell you what the markings meant. So this might mean that bad things are going to happen, the king's going to die, whatever. And so there have been, by the way, hundreds of these recovered from ancient Mesopotamia, and divination was widely attested. I should also just note here.
And
that
hold on, and
we
just so
separate
everyone knows,
divination
they
and
were
prophecy when it
they were
comes to
Hang on,
doing
let me pause. Go ahead. Okay.
they were doing divination they've never stopped doing this. They've been doing the divination scam. At no point did this stop. Today, the people that are in Silicon Valley are operating on Hebrew Bible code divination shit. Okay. At no point since this ancient time has any European society or anybody stopped fucking around with this like ancient Middle Eastern Hebrew divination. We can talk to God and read the future bullshit. Everyone still has been fucking with this over and over. Like no rebellion has ever happened against this. Basically, every rebellion against Christianity or just this like paradigm has basically always failed or been co-opted.
I mean, but wouldn't you say though, like, I mean, okay, so how I've always thought about like Kabbalah is obviously like, you know, I obviously like Jewish magic or whatever, but it's also like they're harnessing something that exists for everyone, and it's like they're using it for their own purposes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I basically think a lot of what's going on is that basically like I would say like the concept of spirituality or like this is just how I view it, like the idea of what we have, like the mental, right? The concept of the mental field or the concept of mental, that whole thing as a science itself, right? Like understanding how the thing operates in like, you know, wavelengths and all the stuff that I'm sure you're familiar with, all that stuff.
Like energy and attraction.
Yeah, and all that stuff that we just can't, that we don't really understand fully yet or whatever, that is something that they had been like developing and then keeping the knowledge for themselves in with themselves as like a clique, right? Like getting knowledge, like finding developments that like, oh, this culture has this development in that. And they've been like basically taking it and then like keeping it like in knowledge within themselves and like, you know, basically like hoarding that stuff as time goes on. Yeah. That's basically like how they operate with this stuff.
But couldn't that be like why like you see so much of this shit? It's like there are other people that are trying to like mess with it, but like this stuff takes time to learn, and it's not like I think like everyone has access to all the same things, but it's the Jews have figured this shit out and they've harnessed it to be able to use it to their best advantage, whereas I think that other groups of people are not necessarily as good at figuring this stuff out.
Well, I think that what made the Jews successful is that they tied their ethnicity to it in a way that no other culture really did. And he's right when he says like this vassal contract concept really helped them out, because what happens is they get conquered by their neighbor, right? So the Assyrians come in, the Babylonians come in, eventually the Greeks come in, right? Then the Romans come in. They're always vassal states essentially. So they're always a people who are ruled over by others, but they get to maintain their identity through their storytelling and through their accumulation of this knowledge and then transmitting it to their future generations in a way that like keeps it to themselves basically.
All the while using their sacred bloodline as a reason why they're so enlightened and special.
For sure. I mean, they trace it back to, oh, we're a priesthood that goes back to Moses, basically. I mean, Adam King, if you talk to him right now, he'll say I'm descendant of King David. right? Like these guys, like they don't fuck around. Like they do think that kind of stuff. So
Well, Adam King told me to go burn in an oven, so I'm not happy about. He did. Adam King, who is a king
That's
Jew of
funny.
the internet, told me to go roast in an oven. Yeah, he did.
yeah.
Was that like a witch reference?
No, he was just being a dick because
Okay.
I was mad at him and I told him to fuck off, and then he got mad at me and he told me to go in an
It's just
oven.
oddly specific.
Very anti-Semitic.
That was very deeply anti-Semitic. Yeah.
The ancient world, because the vast majority of prophets, contrary to the
They
what,
stole
what
my
idea
super
might
chats and
come
told me
your
to go
mind
die
about
in an
what a
oven.
prophet is, very few prophets
Oh,
predict
boy.
the future. That was a different job. Those were diviners. Diviners predicted the future. Prophets communicated via the God. The God would tell the prophet stuff, and then they would tell other people. That's a different job. Now, sometimes prophets did predict the future. In fact, in the Hebrew Bible, there's only a couple of occasions where prophets attempt to predict the future, and they're almost always wrong. One time Ezekiel attempts to predict the future, and he's wrong, and he has to go back later and be like, well, I meant that metaphorically or something. And so very few prophets attempt to predict the future in the ancient world. That is a different job. We now think of prophets as predicting the future, but that's a modern idea, much more than an ancient Israelite idea or ancient Near Eastern idea. So let's talk about theophany first, right? So theophany just means God appearing. It just means the God appears to people, right? This was an idea in ancient Greek religion, but also in ancient Israelite religion. God is appearing to you currently on the screen. I don't know how many people have ever seen an image on the left. This is very likely an early depiction of the Israelite God, Yahweh. We think that is Yahweh for a couple of reasons. One, it says Yahu there in Hebrew, which was an abbreviation of Yahweh's name.
Yeah.
And this coin was minted as part of the satrap of Yehud during the Persian period. And also we have a winged throne chariot that this is sitting in, and that image is very tightly associated with Yahweh in the book of Ezekiel. You're probably looking at a depiction of Yahweh. That's probably the Israelite God. We're fairly confident that is how ancient Judahites conceived of how their God looked. I don't know how many people have seen this image before. Show of hands or things like this. Some folks have seen it. I think it's very interesting that most folks, when they see an image like this, they think of the idea that Yahweh is not allowed to be depicted. But clearly here on the coinage is Yahweh. I also like that Yahweh has a six-pack. I really appreciate that. Yahweh does not see that.
Yahweh.
And
So God appearing, right? God.
One thing that's
appearing is a
interesting here
relatively
that I'll point out
common
is that
motif.
hang on, go ahead.
thing that he's sitting on and this whole thing, it's Ezekiel chariots, right? And I don't know
That's
if
what it reminded me of too. The
Yeah,
wheel
hell-
within the wheel.
Yep, in my view, like those,
Wait.
that's like ancient sci-fi shit, right? Like that's what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like he's up in the sky, riding that thing, sitting on that thing. That's what they're actually talking about seeing.
I'm like,
It's
have
sci-fi.
you ever looked at a Toth tarot deck?
Yeah, I have.
I want to know who the guy is on the bottom right corner, or if I'm matrixing that into a face of a dude with a big nose and a beard.
I see what you're
Yeah,
talking.
I don't know what that is.
Looks like Rush Limbaugh.
I was just gonna say.
Amalek, what reference do you have for chariots in the Toth deck in the tarot? So I'm going to give you a reference. What reference do you have for chariots in the Toth deck?
I have no idea. What are you talking about?
Okay, so hang on. I'm going to show you.
Flying personal craft.
Well, no, hang on.
All my decks are packed except for one, and I'm not sure where it is.
Card. I'm talking about the symbology of the chariot, and I'm trying to find all of the examples of it so I can show you. And
Like
one of the missing was this third to last card. That was why. Okay, so there is a chariot card in every tarot deck, and the chariot is like, control and making sure all your horses are going in the right directions, and you're always protected by the heavens, and forward momentum and all that stuff. But in the Toth deck specifically, what's interesting about the whole chariot reference is, and the reason I bring up the Toth deck is the Toth deck is it has Kabbalistic themes all throughout it. All of the kings are on chariots. All of the king cards are on chariots, and this is different than like other decks. So you have the King of Swords, he's on his chariot there. It's in the circle. There's the king of discs or pentacles in other decks.
Well, that's because Aleister Crowley was huge into
He's on a
Kabbalah.
chariot going across the water, and the King of Wands, which is obviously my favorite, and he's on a chariot as well. So isn't that funny that their god is depicted on a chariot, and all of the kings are on chariots in the Toth deck? There you go.
That's an Aleister Crowley thing, though, for sure.
But no, but Crowley was inspired by Kabbalah in a lot of the art that he did for this deck.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure he was.
Yeah. Yep.
In ancient religions. In fact, many ancient religious rituals were meant to compel the god to appear. This would be in temples and other kinds of locales, and you would do rituals to make the god appear to you. And so what's interesting about the Israelite theophany, God appearing, is that sometimes the Israelite writers like to depict their image of Yahweh as a kind of divine monarch, sort of like a king sitting on a throne. It's a very
like a
image.
king.
And if you had the chance to read this section in Isaiah, the theophany of Isaiah, that's exactly what you get, is a kind of divine leader sitting on a throne. However, what's also important is that the ancient Israelites had developed at some point an allergy to depicting their god. They thought of their god as incorporeal and as invisible. And in other texts, most famously the text of the theophany to Moses, Yahweh actually tells Moses that if you see me face to face, you'll die. You cannot see me face to face. Although later in the book of Deuteronomy, it does say you saw me face to face. Whatever, the Bible has all kinds of editorial problems. And we do see images where God appears to the Israelites, but always occluded somehow. One of the main depictions in the book of Exodus is God is hidden in the Araphel, which means something like the gloom or the darkness. And there's all kinds of light and lightning all around where the God is, but the God itself is actually hidden somehow in the darkness. So God appears, but God is also hidden at the same time. So the Israelites are always trying to navigate. On the one hand, they want to be able to claim, our God appeared to us on Mount Sinai and gave us a law. And this is our contract. We have a contract with God, and that's what makes us special, a chosen people. And on the other hand, they're like, yeah, and our God's invisible. You can't see our God. Our God doesn't have a body, doesn't live in a place. God's a God of everything. And so God often also appears quasi-invisible as well. The main accounts that we have of theophanies in the Hebrew Bible are the main three, right? Or four, actually. We have the theophany to Abraham, or Abram at that time, right? His name hadn't been changed yet. Where God appears to Abram and says, hey, you need to follow me and do what I say, right? Move out of Ur of Canaan, and move to Canaan and set up shop there. We don't learn a lot about God in that instance. The other three theophanies that are important are the Moses theophany, that is to say, the one in which God appears to Moses, both in the burning bush. So notice again, God is there and not there at the same time. The voice comes out of the bush, but it's not like there's a person there that Moses sees. Again, there's a relationship to God that they want to keep separate, unlike perhaps other nearby religions. Although I will say that the two most important theophanies that we have in Israelite literature are the ones to the prophet Isaiah and the one to the prophet Ezekiel. And I don't know if you had the chance to read.
Hold on real quick. Did you see Adam put a super chat in?
No, I didn't see.
Yeah, I just saw it.
I was not paying attention. I'm sorry. I was knitting. Sorry, not Adam Green. Jesus got paid his six-pack from his Hebrew daddy. Yeah, he did. Yeah. But that's like what men think. That's totally a man thing. Six-packs are a man thing. Six-packs are not for women. Six-packs are for men. I'm sorry.
I mean, they're not bad things.
No, I don't like men with. I never have, and I think I feel like this is like. I feel like I'm right in this assessment in that like men get six-packs to show off for other men, whereas women tend to pick the men that don't actually have the six-pack because it's not as, I don't know, cuddly or whatever.
I mean, I would totally do a guy with a six-pack. I'm not gonna lie. I prefer my man with a little belly.
I'm not even joking, and so now all the better like the women are talking now. See, this is what Adam Green started by talking about six packs. No, no, I unironically I tend not to like men who could go to the gym that much. I did because
I don't want a gym bro.
it's not even about the physical like manifestation of it. Like whatever, I don't really care. It's more about like the men who psych themselves up to the point where they do what is required to get a six pack. It's like they tend to be just like not that fun for me to be around.
Yeah, but with that hip ridge and the good.
No, I don't find it attractive. I'm not. I'm like honestly like no. Okay.
We're talking about Jewish Kabbalah, guys. We're talking about Yahweh and his six pack, and you guys start talking about just six.
Welcome to the show. You're lucky we haven't brought up
blasphemy. This is blasphemy. This is why they're sexist or whatever.
Don't make us talk about alien dicks, Amalek. We'll do it.
Listen. I write smut professionally, and I will talk about six packs and penises all day long because I love it and it's fun and they're pretty.
Book of like different words for penis.
I do. I have an erotic author's thesaurus that's like this freaking thick, and it is awesome.
All right.
So one thing that he's about to talk about next is the Ezekiel ascensions, right? And just remember what I said about Paul, that all Christianity is based on what he's about to talk about in these little mystical ascension experiences. I'm sure that's what you're writing about, that kind of stuff in the smut, right? Mystical ascension experiences.
Ascension, also known as the orgasm.
Hey, Jennifer has written like 2 different smut books based on our show alone. Okay, like so
yeah, one for sure, and another is inspired. But yeah, I have 7 out. Just in case you want to read some decent. Anyway, the plots are really good. It's not just
we're focusing. Jennifer Amalek is going to get pissed off. We keep talking about girl things. He's going to leave, and I don't want him to leave. All right, so refocus. Okay, stop thinking about dick.
Oh,
very strange, especially the Ezekiel one. It's notoriously weird. But the one thing that we do know about those theophanies is that in both cases, they are terrifying.
Gnostic
you
sex
do not want Yahweh showing up for you, right?
Nice.
This being is not your friend. This being is not your buddy. It's not your drinking partner. This being is a terrifying being that when they do show up, the people that seem to see this being, they're basically, I say quaking in their boots. They're quaking. The text says they are quaking, like literally, they are shaking in terror. And this is one of the things that we see in Israelite literature, beginning in the Hebrew Bible, but extending into other mystical literature, is that the experience of the divine is terrifying. We have the word awesome, right? But notice how we say all full of all, the word gets negative. All full is bad, but all some is good. Some all is okay, like a rainbow. A lot of all is bad. It's all full. And when God appears to you, when Yahweh appears to the Israelite prophets, it is a terrifying experience. We even have records of their bodies physically shaking, sweating. They lose the ability to speak and things like that. What we think is that the instances of Ezekiel and Isaiah may have been part of what we might call an Israelite shamanism. Now, I don't like to use the word shamanism in a willy-nilly way, because I think that shamanism, as you may know, was a religious practitioner, an ecstatic expert, primarily found in Siberia. And this idea that shamanism has been taken out of this context and applied more generally.
It's the first time I've heard that definition of
process.
shamanism.
I don't like using terms like that in a kind of a rough and ready way. But what we see is that the ecstatic expert, or the shaman, is able to withstand a visitation from Yahweh. And from that visitation, they're able to extract certain kinds of information about what needs to be done. And so in the same way that traditional shamans will often travel to the spirit world in order to cure people, it seems like something analogous is happening with some forms of Israelite prophecy, where the shamans are being visited by Yahweh, and Yahweh is basically telling them how to fix their country. All right. Most of what goes on in prophecy is criticism of society in a general way. And the idea is by criticizing society along religious and social terms, then the Israelites can restore their relationship with Yahweh, and therefore Yahweh will continue to protect them and allow for the prosperity of the land. So the prophets don't cure individual people. You can think about them much more like shamans, but they're shamans for the entire community. So again, this is where using some of these terms can be a little bit misleading and a little bit unclear, but I think that the term does track, at least in a general way. We think that the experiences of the prophets Isaiah and the prophets Ezekiel, the literary record that we have in the Hebrew Bible, probably actually represents an experience. Which is just to say that the persons of Ezekiel and Isaiah probably did experience some kind of mystical event, and they recorded that event, and it is that recording of it is found in the Hebrew Bible. Now, Ezekiel is especially interesting in this regard because if you've read other texts of Ezekiel, you'll know that he is really unusual as a person. He seems to do really extreme things like lie in the street naked for days at a time. So he may have been suffering from some kind of underlying mental health condition, right? We don't know. I mean, again, it's not for me to pathologize Ezekiel or to diagnose him because I have the ability to do neither. But from the record, it seems like Ezekiel may have had some other kinds of mental health concerns, what we would say now, which is also interesting because it shows that what is insanity in one culture is prophecy in another, right? That a shaman functioning in one culture, right, is completely normal, but you take them out of that and put them into capitalism where they can't work, and now they're insane, they're crazy. And so it's
no.
Yeah, he is a communist. I think he is I'll have to ask somebody to confirm. I'm pretty sure he's in that. I'm pretty sure he's an actual communist, like a party member, the whole thing, and he's like into the whole scene and everything. I'm pretty sure.
Jennifer,
if he's not, then I apologize. But I'm pretty sure the last time I looked into this, he was.
I'm pretty sure that any person who talks about capitalism like that is probably a communist.
I think he is. Hold on, I'm gonna message somebody that I know will know this for sure.
Oh boy.
Interesting to see
Never meet
how
your heroes.
what counts as insanity
All idols have
can
clay
really
feet.
change from culture to culture. Ezekiel was clearly a respected member of society, whereas I think now he might be
listen.
institutionalized.
We listen to fucking communists all the time. Why we literally listen to communists all the time. Why are we listening to this guy? Because he has good information, and just because we don't agree with his beliefs doesn't mean that. Amlik explained this earlier. Where were you? Like, just because we don't agree with his beliefs doesn't mean he's not right about the history of it, okay? So relax.
He's not talking about communism. He's giving a lecture on Kabbalism. So,
well, also think of it this way. In my view, the reason that he is a communist because he actually thinks that these ideas are good. These ideas of the Tikkun Olam, the oneness of the earth, and in his view, like communism is that like the most true materialist version of that being fulfilled. Like he basically is like he describes himself as post-theist, like a post-religious person, where he doesn't like actually believe in the God or whatever, but he does the rituals, right? And he understands and he analyzes why they were important or what the underlying meaning or usage of the ritual is, and then he like partakes in that part of it for the sake of his identity or for the sake of, for this ritual's sake, if that makes sense. And that's how he sees it.
There you go.
So again, it's just interesting to notice how these things can shift enormously through time. It's also worth noting here that Ezekiel and Isaiah, the theophanies of Ezekiel and Isaiah, which the Isaiah one is also very terrifying, right? God appears to Isaiah, and basically Isaiah says, "I'm going to die." He says, "I'm finished," like I'm going to die, and he doesn't die, and then he's basically anointed by God to tell the message of Yahweh.
I don't know if he tells you. I don't know if he says this.
Go ahead.
But Ezekiel literally like he cooks food using like poop, and it's like implied that it's human poop. It might be cow poop, but it's like implied that it's human poop.
A lot of primitive people had to use manure bricks to have fires. So he ate scrolls. Like Ezekiel's a weird dude, and that's this is where if he's using human poop, that is odd. If he's eating scrolls, that is. I mean, some people looked at that as a way of literally absorbing or osmosizing the knowledge. But that doesn't make you any less crazy for thinking that. Yikes.
Musican has a chat. He says, from the FAQ on his website, what is your philosophical or metaphysical worldview? Would consider myself a dialectical materialist in the tradition of structural Marxism. Yeah, he's a communist.
Wow.
Well done.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
I did
Yeah,
message
man.
somebody and they were like, yeah, obviously. Like, yeah, okay. He answered right away. So
is that they will become the foundations for an entire school of Jewish mysticism called Merkava literature or chariot literature. This form of Jewish
Chariot
mysticism, which we'll get
literature.
to.
this is so important. This is
not next
literally what
time, but the
Paul's
time after
doing.
that.
This is what Paul
This
does.
is
This is what Paul's
What do you mean?
describing. Like, okay, listen, like people don't understand this. This is what blew my mind. Like, okay, I used to hate Adam because I thought that he was divisive. And then I looked into this topic and I couldn't believe he was right. Paul never talks about like a historical gospel character Jesus, born in Bethlehem and the whole story and the temple, all this shit. Okay, all of the story parts of the Gospels. That is not what Paul's talking about. Paul is talking about having an experience and seeing Jesus in the heavens, in the third heaven, in the clouds. He's having Merkaba mystic experiences like the ones being described here in Kabbalah. And so Christianity is born out of basically like a shamanistic Judaism. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that Jesus didn't exist as a historical person, this is why I say this. This is what I'm talking about, is that the first Christians were talking about this right here. A guy that they're seeing in visions and he's speaking for God, basically. He is God.
Oh,
This is what I'm talking about. This is
Okay.
what I mean.
Okay.
I'm okay. This is what I mean. So Paul, never ever talks about a historical guy, Jesus, who did any of the stuff that's in the New Testament. Okay, or in the Gospels rather. Now, when you look at the Gospels, every single one of them is written like a Greek stage play, where it's like enter the characters, then they do the thing, and then next scene, right? And each scene is directly a reference to one of these prophecies, Ezekiel or Isaiah or Daniel or whatever. And it's just basically like authors went back and was like, oh, we're just going to fulfill each one of these prophecies. And what I would say is the way that they're interpreted, the way that they're basically like looking at those things is through this it's called like this midrash, like midrash. Like it's a lens of intentionally taking the prophecies outside of their context. It's kind of like the way that Christians today will basically like say like, oh, Donald Trump is the guy from Revelation or whatever. It's like taking the context of the original text out of it, right? And then applying it to like whatever you want. In this case, like I said, Donald Trump or whatever. That is what Christianity is born out of, is basically these ascension rituals, these ascension experiences. And that is where Paul sees Jesus. The Gospels that we know today don't come until far later.
Yeah.
That's why I say there's no historical Jesus.
So basically it's like if someone wrote a movie to like describe to have it perfectly aligned with something that already it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like if you know what it is? It's a fucking fan fiction. That's what it is. It's a fucking fan fiction. I got there. Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on. Well, this is the thing. Okay, so the Jews are talking about a Messiah coming, right? Like there's a guy coming, and his name, and we're calling him the Messiah. And basically, all the Jews think that he's going to be a military leader. That basically he's going to conquer the Romans, he's going to conquer the Greeks, he's going to conquer the Assyrians, the Babylonians, etc. But what's happening is every time some guy claims I'm the Messiah, and they do that, they get militarily crushed. They just lose on the battlefield. They get the Romans felt them like every time. The Greeks destroy the Greeks are like just like massacring Jews like by the thousands. Like they're just destroying them. And so they just don't ever have this military leader. So what's going on is the Essenes have this concept, like a dual Messiah concept. This is suffering Messiah concept. The idea that he's not a Messiah that's going to come to like militarily conquer, but what he's going to do is he's going to rule by the word of his mouth, right? It's a Messiah who's going to rule basically on belief, okay? And that is where Paul says that by reading scripture and having ascension experiences, that's where he sees Jesus. in the scriptures of the prophets, when they're talking about a guy who rules by his mouth, that's who he says Jesus is.
So it would be like if I did ayahuasca and I saw Jesus in a vision, which I know many people who've actually done that, and then I came back and said, "This is how the world works because of this vision I had, and this person existed because of this vision."
It would be like, okay, so you understand like Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in Game of Thrones, there's like the prince that was promised, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be like if you read those books, okay, and then you had a thing where you're like, actually, the prince that was promised is actually like, some other thing that's totally out of context of those books, and it's like a real thing in a real, like it's a real concept, okay, and now. So it's completely born out of literature, this idea. And then afterwards, somebody comes along and writes a bunch of fan fictions, like you described, of your new prince that was promised books, right? Like your new or character or whatever. Okay, that is what the Gospels are. Is they're like iterations on this Hebrew prophecy stuff. That's essential. That's what I'm saying when I say it's like built on a fraud.
I'm getting reminded of Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. I'm getting such huge vibes of that, like a completely invented thing, which I believe most religions really are. Just somebody organized the material and went, here, this is it.
Christianity is basically Scientology, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this like I said,
Scientology.
But Karlyn, does that make sense now when I say like I think that Jesus was literally like a superhero character? Why I think that he wasn't a historical guy? It would make less sense if he was a historical guy, right? Because this is where he was originated from.
I always understood your argument for that. I understand your argument. My argument is that I think it's a lot easier to build a myth around a nugget of truth than it is to build it around other things. Also, Jesus was a character in things that have nothing to do with Christianity. And so I think that but I think when I talk about this, I'm talking about a different thing than what you're talking about. You're talking about the Jesus of the Christian Bible. I am not talking about the Jesus of the Christian Bible.
Yeah, I'm just specifically talking about the historicity of the character in the Gospels. You're right.
Yeah.
So
I think he was a kind guru who became a political radical and was slayed for his beliefs because he was causing problems.
I don't think that there was a historical guy at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was at all.
See, I think there was someone who was teaching people something, but I don't believe in the Bible story part of it. I think that that's all bullshit, but I think there was a person that was teaching people something.
I think there was a crew of what I would call Hellenized Jews who were mixing Neoplatonism, Middle Platonism, and what we would call like Second Temple Judaism of the it was a critique against both the Pharisees and the Sadducees while agreeing with some of their points from an Essene perspective is how I would describe it. And like that is what Christianity was born out of.
See, and I agree with that completely, but I do think that there was a central figure there. But I mean, that's just, because I've read a lot of other stuff, but also I'm starting to fade because I'm getting really tired. So I'm like, what you said plus another dude. Yep. Okay.
This was the dominant form of Jewish mysticism for 800 years. So if you want to think about the Kabbalah as existing now for about 800 years.
Do you guys want to get to a good stopping point and then we can cut it here because Jennifer is getting tired and we can pick it up next week? Does that sound like a good plan?
We had a long day.
Maybe get him off get this slide or something and just get to a good stopping point.
That'd be great. I think that'd be really cool. I gotta go cook dinner too still.
All right.
Sounds good.
Kabbalah mysticism was the dominant form of Jewish mysticism for the 800 years prior to that. So this chariot mysticism, and again, when I say chariot mysticism, you should always keep in mind, right? This is how Yahweh is depicted, as literally riding on a kind of winged chariot. Unsurprisingly, this form of mysticism is going to be very important. Just as a preview, Merkavah mysticism is a form of mysticism in which the rabbinical elite would descend into the palaces of Yahweh, and they would meet with various angels, and they would show angels these various passwords, and eventually they would be able to climb through the various heavens. And again, even I did it up, right? But they're not going up; they're going down. In the mystical your day, they go down to the chariot, and they eventually are given a glimpse of the throne of God Sometimes they're allowed to see the body of God, which I know that Jews are not supposed to believe that God has a body. They did. They were allowed to measure the body of God. We'll look at that literature. And in some cases, they were even allowed to sit on the throne of God and be transformed
Oh
into
no.
angels.
Yeah,
So
one of
if you ever
isn't
want to
it
be transformed into an angel,
who was it?
all you
It's
Hang on,
not
what was it,
Ezekiel, but not Ezekiel, but the other guy, Enoch. Didn't Enoch say he sat on the throne of God?
I think
Then
so.
he was taken up into the UFO.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
All right, we got a super chat. An amalgamation of multiple heroes like Ragnar Lothbrok of Vikings Age
Oh,
history. Yeah, I
that's
mean maybe.
interesting.
Although Ragnar was a real person.
He was, but in the Viking series,
the
they
series. Oh, his
used
amalgamation.
different characters. Yeah, they did that a lot with. I think they did that with Bjorn as
That was
well.
one of the best TV series ever made. Like at
So
least the
good.
first like several seasons until Ragnar died, and then kind of went downhill after that. But the first like the Ragnar part of it was fucking awesome.
It was really good.
you have to do is bypass a bunch of scary angels and sit on the throne of God. No big whoop. No big whoop. So that's a very cool form of mysticism, and we will get to it in a couple of weeks. So again, Merkava mysticism, not Kabbalah. Different kind of Jewish mysticism, but anchored in the theophany of Ezekiel and Isaiah.
All right.
So
that seems like a good stopping point for this week because we've been just going for 3 hours now, and Jennifer's got to go kick dinner. Amalek, thank you for joining us this week. This was actually pretty great. This is basically the Amalek show, but I appreciate it because I like listening to you talk about this stuff. I'll sit here and listen. I'm fine.
I love how you can connect dots, and it's very helpful. And I mean, like I knew a lot of the stuff. I didn't know all the things, so I love that you're also a good teacher, and I really appreciate that. How you convey knowledge is easy to understand. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun. I really like watching Justin Sledge's videos for the knowledge that he has for this stuff and applying it to politics. So I'm on Twitter or whatever. You guys can follow me there. And shout out to Reagan for tagging me and telling me to come hang out. That was fun.
Cool. And you're going to come back and join us next week, you think?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
That'd be great.
I can do that. Just tag me again. I'm going to forget, and then just tag me again, and I'll jump back in.
Okay, we will summon you before next week and remind you.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we got for tonight. We do DISENRAGE every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. So come hang out next week, and we will be continuing with more of these episodes to learn more about Jewish magic and all that stuff. And I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. And Jennifer, do you have any announcements? Yeah, go ahead.
I do, yes. We've got movie night coming up on Sunday. We will be showing A Scanner Darkly with the great Keanu Reeves and several other amazing actors. It is the first fully done feature film with rotoscope, and it is fantastic. It's very conspiratorial, and I freaking love it. It's super trippy. And then we've got on Monday for Max Movie Monday night, he is going to be doing scrolling Trinity and Beyond, which I've never heard of. I have no idea what that is, but I will be showing the trailer for it after my movie on Sunday.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you guys then. And I guess that's it for tonight. So take care, guys.
Wait, hold on real quick. Hold on. You guys are doing it. Are you guys doing A Scanner Darkly, you said?
Yeah, on Sunday.
You want to come to movie night?
Come to movie night.
Do you know about, I'm guessing you don't even know about, so his book, that is all based on what we're talking about. It's based on like a Gnostic Kabbalistic view of, look into the guy who made it. That's what I'll say.
Okay. The
guy who made
producer,
it,
the director, or the writer?
Yeah.
It's the universe winking at us. There are no coincidences.
Philip Dick. I'm talking about Dick.
Oh, Philip K. Dick. Oh, yeah. The author. Gotcha. Yeah, he's had all of his books turned into movies. He's such a great writer. So look into Philip K. Dick, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will do that. And because I always do movie trivia and stuff like that throughout the film. So that'll be
There's a lot of like obvious like Gnostic themes is what I would say. That are like echoed in like this type of like these ascension mystical tradition things that they'll explain, like their visions explain. He's kind of like telling one of those stories, like he's retelling that a lot of those motifs. So he's like very familiar with them. You can tell in the story.
Interesting. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Right on. All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you when we see you, I guess. Bye.